Donald Trump is president-elect, and that means that he has to be informed about the country's most sensitive secrets. Over the next few days, he will receive upgraded national security briefings from U.S. intel and military leaders. There's also going to be some tension that is going to meet Trump. Why? Well, because he's been hard on that community, and he's called the ongoing battle for Mosul a disaster. So how will he repair? CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr joins us now with a look at this problem facing our next president. Barbara, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Well, Donald Trump and Mike Pence are about to learn what the generals and the intelligence community already know. The world is a very tough place. Now, as president-elect, he will begin getting those upgraded intelligence briefings. Some call them the crown jewels. These will be daily briefings, the same that President Obama and Vice President Biden get, the most secret, the most classified intelligence, overnight threats, covert operations, all of it. They will now have access to all of it. I've talked to people who've been involved in some of these briefings, and they say a new president-elect, after they get these types of briefings, usually very sobering. They learn what they are facing. What is Donald Trump facing? He comes to office as the fight for Mosul, the fight to get ISIS out of Raqqa in Syria, will be well underway. A big question, will President Obama put more troops into that fight before Trump takes office? But one of the big threats coming, perhaps North Korea. The CIA very concerned that there could be a provocation from North Korea to test a new American leader. Chris?
All right, thank you very much, Barbara. Appreciate it. So President-elect Trump heading to Washington today. The big meeting with President Obama. The word awkward pops into everybody's mind. Let's discuss with CNN political commentator and host of CNN's Smerconish, Michael Smerconish. Awkward, why? Well, it has nothing to do with one party versus the other. This is the man who tried to prove that President Obama was an other, not born here, not legitimate, part of the ugliness towards our first African-American president. Now he is president himself. What do you make of it?
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for each of their spaces before they get together. But when they're together, I think it's going to be just fine. I think that I have to get used to saying this. I think that President-elect Trump struck exactly the right chord in his acceptance speech in the wee hours of Wednesday morning. And by the way, I thought that Secretary Clinton handled herself admirably yesterday. So our leaders are saying and doing all the right things. It's time to put this result behind us and to oversee a smooth transition of power. And I have great faith in President Obama and in Donald Trump in being able to pull that off today.
So, Michael, how do you reconcile what you heard in that gracious speech of Donald Trump's on Tuesday night versus what you've heard for the past 18 months? How do you ask voters, particularly who supported Hillary Clinton, to unhear everything they heard from Donald Trump for 18 months?
If my glass is half full, if I'm being optimistic, it comes down to 2 Corinthians. And what I mean by that is that I reflect on the Donald Trump that we've seen during the course of this campaign, and I wonder, is that the real guy? Is that really how he's going to govern? Or was he playing to particular audiences along the way? And is he, in fact, and this is my hope, fingers are crossed, that he's much more of a pragmatist, that he's going to lessen the temperature, and that he's going to rise to the occasion?
But is that satisfying? I'm not disagreeing with your premise, but think about it. If that's the truth, if the truth is, I don't really believe what I said about people like you, perfect people, but I said it because it was helpful to me in the moment, so I don't really mean it. Does that make me easier to accept than if he were an authentic bigot, I guess would be the term?
Well, it doesn't make it all worthwhile. I mean, it doesn't mean, oh, okay, therefore we're all going to be fine. But hopefully it's a sign that the future is not to be as divided, as divisive as the campaign was.
Hey, Michael, what happened in Pennsylvania, right? That's your home state. That's the Republicans' white whale that they every year say, I think we have a chance. I think we have a chance, only for it to be, Lucy and the football, as we've heard before. And Donald Trump did it.
So yesterday I spoke, and let me give a shout out to David Urban, because he's a guy who should be better known than he is. He ran the Trump campaign in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I've known him for many, many years. We used to have our friendship and working relationship with Arlen Specter in common. And something that I pointed out to him that he didn't disagree with is that on any other election day, the turnout model for Secretary Clinton would have been enough. The margin that she got out of the city of Philadelphia and out of those well-discussed Philadelphia suburbs should have been sufficient to carry the state. But as the two of you have been discussing all morning long, I mean, there really was an outperformance by that Trump base, the hillbilly elegy J.D. Vance constituency that no pollster took a correct approximation of. It wasn't by a wide margin, by the way. You know, the pollsters are getting hammered, and nobody nailed it. But really, there was about a 2-point differential across the country, and because it was such a close race, that had enormous consequences.
It's like everything else that we've seen in this election, where perception winds up overwhelming reality. People start saying all the projections were wrong, and we don't care. We didn't do the projections. You know, our job is to test power, you know, to speak truth to power and to get the issues out. We don't do the measuring, Allison, and we don't even do math,
I don't have a measuring
let alone
tape.
Measurements. But it's one of the new narratives, just like everything else. Something's perceived as true and it becomes true. So let's talk about something that is absolutely true. You have the next president-elect won the Electoral College the way they need to qualify, did not win the popular vote. This disconnect we saw 16 years ago in 2000, that was caught up in a different mishigas of what happened in Florida. What do you make of this feeling that will come up every time this happens of, at Electoral College, man, it's got to go?
You know, I'm going to have that conversation today on the radio, but it's probably the wrong day to have it, because everybody suits up in their usual partisan jersey, looks at the election that we just had, decides whether the Electoral College suited their interests, and then decides how they feel about the Electoral College. Probably 2 years from now is the right time for the debate. I personally question whether we still need the Founding Fathers' edict of keeping the unwashed masses at arm's length away from the final result. But I know I'm going to get a distorted picture of that when I open my telephone lines in about an hour or so.
All right, we look forward to you sharing with us the results of that little focus group that you'll be doing. Michael, great to talk to you. Thank you.
You too. All right.
How will the transition of power play out, particularly today? Up next, we'll ask the man who led the Bush-Cheney transition team.
Look at it.
In just hours, President Obama will welcome President-elect Donald Trump to the White House. How does the transfer of power work? What will happen today? Here to discuss is Clay Johnson. He was the executive director of the Bush-Cheney transition team when they took office, when they took office in 2000. Is that right, Mr. Johnson?
That's correct.
Okay, so tell me about that. Before we get to what will happen today, tell me about that moment, what that transfer of power that day was like.
Well, the transition of power began, official transition of power began on December 13th, not Election Day, when the election was decided. And so it was a very unusual time. We had the transition about half the normal length. And so the outgoing administration had half the time they normally have to pass the baton to the new administration, and we had half the time that's normally available to accept the baton and run with it. It was a very unusual time. We had made a plan months in advance. We had begun a private sector funded transition preparation effort December 1st. Yeah. So we were doing a lot of things we could do to make up for the unusual situation. It was just a very odd time, but we, I think, hit the ground running on January 20th in 2001 and caught up very quickly by about March or April with what other administrations had done in terms of putting their team on the field.
So, Mr. Johnson, what do you think is going to happen today? I mean, take us behind the scenes in terms of whether there's tension when the outgoing meets the incoming, or are they alone for long periods of time? Is there a tour? What happens?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I tell you what, I have a good reason to believe. I think that this is going to be a wonderful meeting. This is about America now, and President Obama has said that, and President Trump President-elect Trump is looking forward to that. When George Bush replaced Governor Ann Richards, she said that she wanted her outgoing transition to be the best ever. And it was very magnanimous. It was very productive. It was Governor-elect Bush was helped tremendously by Governor Richards' staff. As President Obama has talked about, the outgoing Bush administration was tremendously well treated by the outgoing Bush administration, and I was involved in that, and it was a wonderful experience. It was the kind of thing you would hope that would happen in a country like ours, and it did. And so President Obama has praised President Bush for that assistance because he got into the job and realized how just incredibly important it was to have that kind of counsel and assistance by the outgoing administration. So now he's going to give back.
Well, about that counsel, I mean, but Mr. Johnson, about that counsel, what do they say to each other? I mean, is there a moment where they are alone in a room, and do they share wisdom as they pass the baton?
Well, wisdom is passed several different ways. The key is that President-elect Trump wants to be a very effective president, and he has to be a very effective president starting at 12:01 on January 20th, particularly with regards to national security, homeland security, health matters, economic crises, and so forth that might rear their ugly heads. He doesn't have the freedom or the liberty of waiting until February, March to become prepared to be a really good commander-in-chief. So between now and January 20th, he has to put a team in the White House of relevant folks to advise him on national and homeland security matters, and he needs to put cabinet and sub-cabinet people in place. And he needs to put more people in place in the cabinet and sub-cabinet than ever before, probably 50, 60 people within a week or so of January 20th, because this world we live in is way more dangerous than ever before. So the risk of problems to deal with is great. So in addition to putting the team together, the outgoing administration has to arrange for the team members who may not be confirmed yet by the Senate to be able to sit in the Situation Room, for instance, and watch a typical sit-room crisis management kind of meeting take place with people playing the president and presidential advisors, the military people who are typically there, be in that meeting, and for the new people soon to come in to understand what the air conditioning sounds like, what the Situation Room is like, that the wood paneling and how big is it or how small is it, what kind of conversation takes place, what kind of level of detail is made available to the participants, so that the first time they're in that sit room, the first time they're part of or observing, or when they become president, actually leading and participating in a meeting, it's not for real.
Wow.
And the outgoing administration is critical to making that happen. And I know the Bush people made that happen for Obama, and I have every confidence that Obama is going to make that happen for President-elect Trump.
This is serious stuff, and you're right. The world moves so quickly now. It has to happen quickly. Clay Johnson, thank you very much. Great to have you here on New Day. Let's get to Chris.
That was interesting. All right, so the election, boy, it has given us a lot of lessons, and it's revealed a fundamental truth about an anger and a divisiveness in this country. Donald Trump exploited that to his advantage. Now, how does he unite the country? A friend and his biographer joins us live next. So, President-elect Donald Trump is preparing to meet with President Obama at the White House this morning. Many are wondering, is he going to maintain his conciliatory tone and message of unity? Probably, but the big question becomes, where does it go from here? Let's discuss with real estate developer and friend of the president-elect, Peter Calico, and we have Trump biographer Michael D'Antonio, author of The Truth About Trump. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us this morning. Peter, congratulations to you as friend of.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a fundamental question that the president-elect is dealing with right now. Which is he? There's a Jekyll and Hyde feeling about him. He came out, he was gracious, he says it's time to bind the wounds, let's unite. But then there's this feeling about him evidenced somewhat in these protests, but not too much should be made about them, that, well, he's the one who divided. He exploited that. He played that to advantage. So how can he heal what he exploited? What do you say to people?
I think that what you need to remember about him is he does what is necessary for the job. And when you are running a campaign, you are appealing to people to vote for you. When you become president, you are now the president of everybody. And I think that was exactly the tone he set, which was the correct tone. He's very talented, Chris, about things like that. And he has that way of understanding what is necessary. But he has that other talent, which I really like. His children call that he's a blue-collar billionaire. He understands what working people go through. I have a little of that, not as much, but a great practitioner of that was your dad. He was governor of New York.
Just didn't have the billionaire part, which is why I got to do this job.
But he had governor part, which was not bad either. But he understood what it took, what working people are going through. And I think that's interesting about President-elect Trump, and I think that's why he won.
He certainly tapped into something, and people are going to have that after analysis about what does this mean for white America. They were so dominant in this election. You on the personal side. So to understand Peter's point, we have to understand who Trump is. And in your understanding of him as a person, do you believe that intolerance is something that's deep-seated in him, or do you believe that what's deep-seated is the need to win, and that that's how he got there?
Well, he is extremely pragmatic, and so he did set about to win, and that is clear, and I don't think, I wouldn't want to play checkers against Donald Trump, because every game he enters, he knows how to win. So that was then. He does have the ability to pivot, and he may have been waiting to be elected president before he turned to be presidential. There's also this whole idea that the office inhabits the man more than the man inhabiting the office, and I think it's quite awesome to consider what happened to Donald Trump on Tuesday. He suddenly became president-elect. So he can rise to the occasion. He does have a feeling for the average guy and gal, and I think it is incumbent upon him to do the healing. It can't just be telling people this is what we're going to do. I think he has to act, because the fear and anxiety that some people have is real, and we don't want a country so divided.
Peter, one more beat on this. One of the reasons I was happy you accepted the invitation to come on the show is that you're a no BS guy. People know that about you. You're not going to change your opinion because it makes somebody happy, okay? But, as ethnics, it doesn't make you feel any better. You're Jewish, you're Italian, whatever your ethnic background is. You never feel better if someone says, look, the reason I said that Italians are criminals is because it helped me get elected here. I don't think you guys are criminals. Don't feel bad about that. Right. It doesn't make me feel any better. So how do you reconcile that from those who feel they were put in the category of other by Trump's campaign, whether they're gay or whatever minority group they're from, so you're telling me you only stoked intolerance against me because it got you elected, but you don't actually feel that way and you think I should be okay with it?
I think that he didn't do that just to get elected. He understood that there were people out there who the world had forgotten. And they used to be a really important part of our country. I looked at the Michigan map, I looked at the Pennsylvania map, the Ohio map, and these were rock union towns that he carried, because the people and the country forgot those.
Yeah, but that doesn't address the question that you asked. The question you asked was about the people he insulted, the people that he rejected, and the fact that he did that is incontrovertible. He did it many times, and it was an appeal to the worst in us. And I think now Donald has to show that he can appeal to the best of us. And
can he?
I think it's in him. I really do think it's in him. I hope that he has people that help him to do that. I think that a lot of his campaign surrogates were just as mean-spirited, and they're going to have to show that they have this other side of them, too. They're complete human beings, so let's pray that that's what comes out.
Go
ahead, Peter, please.
The main driving force that he's had since I know him, and that's a long time, he likes to win. He doesn't like to lose. And when he becomes president, he will want America to win, and that's all Americans. Because if America wins, that plays into his being of being a winner.
It's, the biggest fundamental shift that we're going to see is when you're on the way in, you can blame everybody. Once you're in, you're to blame from everybody. It'll be interesting to see how President-elect Trump does with that in one small way, even with the media. His relationship's got to change. Mr. D'Antonio, Mr. Calico, thank you. You helped us understand things better this morning. Appreciate it. There is a lot of news for you this morning. Let's get to it.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division and unify our great country.
We must accept this result and then look to the future.
Not my president! Not my president!
This needs to be a time of redemption, not a time of recrimination.
I promise you that I will not let you down.
God Trump safe! God Trump safe!
We who believe in freedom will not rest.
We're not Democrats first. We're not Republicans first. We are Americans first.
This is New Day with Chris Cuomo and Allison Cameron.
Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is New Day, and up first, President-elect Donald Trump is going to Washington to meet with President Obama. This is part of the formal transitioning of power. The Oval Office meeting at the White House is going to be awkward with a capital A. Why? Because Trump is not only a critic of President Obama, he's the guy who tried to prove that Obama wasn't born here.
So we're hearing about unity, but we're seeing a different picture in some cities. Protesters taking to the streets, some blocking highways, as you can see, others setting fires and chanting, quote, "Not my president." We have it all covered for you, so let's begin with CNN's Athena Jones. She is live at the White House. Hi, Athena.
Hi, Allison. This is not the meeting that President Obama was hoping to have or expecting to have. He spent months saying that he didn't think Donald Trump would ever be president. Well, now Donald Trump is going to be president, and so the focus has to shift to the peaceful handover of power. Now, the White House has talked about how much they appreciated the way George W. Bush's team handled that transition back in 2008 and 2009. It was smooth, it was professional, and this is something the president spoke about again yesterday in the Rose Garden.
I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect. Because we are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
Now, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest has said that it's too early to say what sort of impact Trump's election will have on President Obama's top policy priorities. But we know that Trump ran on promises to undo much of Obama's legacy. And so we expect him to get to work right away on things like repealing and replacing Obamacare, reversing some of the president's executive actions on things like immigration and regulations of power plants. Trump has also said he wants to withdraw from agreements like the Iran nuclear deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, and also the Paris Climate Accord. And I can tell you we're getting some indications from Congress that TPP, that trade deal, is all but dead. So there's a lot to discuss and a lot that could change under a Trump presidency. After President-elect Trump meets here with President Obama, he and Vice President-elect Mike Pence will go on to meet with House Speaker Paul Ryan. So a lot on the schedule, a lot to watch today.
It is going to be a very busy day, Athena. Thanks so much for setting it up for us. Donald Trump now has 2 months to fill thousands of jobs as he prepares to take office. It's one of Washington's favorite parlor games. Who will get the top posts in Trump's cabinet? CNN's Sunlen Serfati is live in Washington with a look at some of the names being floated. Who are you hearing, Sunlen?
A lot of possibilities here, Allison, and President-elect Donald Trump and his team, they have really been hunkered down and huddled up, going over all these potential names for these top jobs. And I can tell you a lot of these names, they just won't be a surprise to you because many of the people are ones that we've heard of standing by Donald Trump during the campaign trail, in his inner circle during the campaign. Now they could go on to fill out his cabinet and turn into his new inner circle in the White House.
On day 2 as president-elect, Donald Trump now looking to turn his promises into policy, beginning with his call for unity.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division.
Words echoed by President Obama and Hillary Clinton, both pledging a peaceful transition of power.
We are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country.
We must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
Trump now in the throes of building his administration.
So we have to get ready to form a government.
Potentially rewarding some of his top supporters. RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, one prospective option for Trump's chief of staff.
I haven't thought about it. And right now I'm chairman of the party. I'm excited about that job.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who has led his transition team, also being eyed for top posts. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani under consideration for Attorney General or Secretary of Homeland Security, while Newt Gingrich is being floated as the prospective Secretary of State. Other possible cabinet picks, Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions for Defense Secretary, billionaire businessman Carl Icahn for Treasury Secretary, and retired Army General Michael Flynn for National Security Advisor. When Trump takes office in January, he'll have extraordinary power to push through his agenda with Republican majorities in both houses of Congress.
He heard those voices that were out there that other people weren't hearing, and he just earned a mandate.
And certainly new attention is now being paid to what candidate Trump said on the campaign trail about what his first 100 days in office would potentially look like. He's made several big, broad, sweeping proposals, things like cleaning up Washington, protecting the American worker, and restoring rule of law. But he also did at times make very specific, detailed promises like repealing Obamacare, renegotiating some specific trade deals, and Chris, perhaps the most notorious promise that we heard him repeat time and time again from the campaign trail to build that wall along the Mexican border. Chris?
All right, Sondland, thank you very much. Many provocative questions, but forget the questions. Let's get some answers. I can do that for you right now. I got former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He is Trump's campaign senior advisor, and many more soon, maybe more soon. Good to see you. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor. So let's get some answers here. You just said something to me while we were coming out of Sondland's piece. Something happens to a man who becomes president. How does that inform your idea of what we will see out of President-elect Trump today? Because many people are concerned, Obama and Trump, they hate each other. This has been really ugly and bitter. This could be bad. What do you say?
I say you're going to see a very, I hate to use the word cordial because it's used almost as a diplomatic term, you know. When people yelled at each other, you say they had a cordial meeting. But I think you're going to see a very professionally run meeting between two men who actually have a lot of charm. We know Donald from some of his comments that weren't so charming. And we know Obama now on the campaign trail from some of the comments that weren't so charming. But sitting together, I think they're going to be able to talk like two of the very few people in the history of the world, one who has the power and one who is going to...
That may be him. You want to answer that?
And one who is going to... and one.
What are you doing on with Cuomo?
And one who is going to hold the power. So I would say that, yeah, we got to do something with this thing. Off. Done. Okay.
Was it him?
No.
Okay. Can't have the president-elect interrupting my interview.
No.
So you were saying two of the few men who understand
that this is a the weight of the world is on their shoulders, and Donald, I think, realized it the last couple of days of the campaign. I think he really realized it when he saw.
You've seen a change.
Yeah.
Now, so people are going to come to you and they're going to say, "Okay, he won. Democracy affords him an opportunity. People should have an open mind." It's trickier here, though, because when someone comes out and says, we should be unified, okay, when they are the person who is blamed with creating the division, now it's more complicated because which one of these people do you believe? Is this the Trump that we saw as president-elect or the one who was stoking intolerance?
My advice would be the same advice that I gave President Bush when he won in 2004. And kind of wasn't followed. I think you go with the things you know you can pass. Like, for example, way back then, Bush could have passed immigration reform, just like Obama could have when he first came in. And both of them passed on it, so now they leave it for now.
So you think he should start with that?
No, I think he should start with tax reform.
Tax reform
because
first?
I think he's got the votes for it. I think he definitely has the Republican votes for it in House and Senate, and I think he probably has maybe 20% of the Democratic vote for it. So he could get it done with a bipartisan majority.
But people will say, wait a minute. I'm here for the wall. I'm angry. I want the wall, and I want to drain the swamp.
The wall is going to take a while. I'm sure he's going to build it. It's a campaign promise. He's not going to break a campaign
Guys
promise.
in Congress don't want it. On both sides, there's resistance.
Well, he can do it by executive order, by just reprogramming money within the immigration service. And not only that, they have actually approved a wall for certain portions of the border that hasn't even been built yet. So you could take a year building that out with what has been approved.
So go with what you can get done. Let bygones be bygones. Move on from the politics.
And after you get a couple of credits under your belt, like tax reform, which I think can get done, like a stimulus program, but a real one for infrastructure. This time, the commitment has to be the money gets spent on infrastructure. And this is not to go back over old wounds, but I think President Obama made a big mistake with his stimulus program when he promised it would be spent on infrastructure. But it wasn't. There were no shovel-ready jobs. Right now, we need it. That'll put Americans back to work. That'll be a good long-term investment in America. It's going to help grow our economy.
But if this is to not be about settling scores, politics at its worst, keeping a list, that raises an interesting issue that I want your take on specifically. Hillary Clinton, big part of his campaign rhetoric, some of his angriest talk was, I am going to appoint a special prosecutor to look into her. Chris Christie was on TV this morning. Other surrogates of Trump have said, look, that's politics. It's over now. Leave it alone. You haven't said that.
Well, I think it's a tough decision. I think it's a tough decision because you have to weigh what Chris is saying, which is that it's been a tradition in our politics to put things behind us. On the other hand, you have to look at how bad was it? Because suppose somebody comes along a year from now and is alleged to have stolen $50,000 from a charity, and she was never investigated for hundreds of millions.
So do it then.
Well, not after you pardon her. You can't do it.
But is it about pardoning or is it about leaving her alone? How do you expect to get anything done with the Democrats if you're still going after Hillary Clinton?
I think that's I don't know what the right answer to that is. I think it's a tough one that should be given a lot of thought, and it shouldn't be an off-the-cuff answer. The equal administration of justice is one of our most important principles.
But you have the FBI that's taken a look at the foundation stuff. They haven't moved on it.
Why not? Because they were denied a grand jury. They were denied a grand jury by the Eastern District of New York.
But you had Comey, who didn't recommend anything. You had the DOJ, who said they didn't think there was anything.
He never got to investigate. He never got to investigate the foundation. So there are legal questions that are more complicated than just saying, let's forget about it. If, in fact, you believe you have a Justice Department that's been corrupted, you got to fix it. And he needs an Attorney General who's going to be like Edward Levy was after Watergate. It's got to be an Attorney General.
You think Comey has to go?
That's a decision for the president. That's a presidential appointment. He's got to make that decision.
Well, it's not easy to get someone out, by the way. It's not a political,
I would think
he's got a term
I would
involved.
think if the president wanted Jim out, Jim would leave. The FBI director can't function without.
So you think it's a possibility, but it's up to the president?
That's up to the president, and I think it's a close one. Personally, I trust Jim. I like Jim. He worked for me. He was an assistant U.S. attorney that I trained. And although I had a severe disagreement with him.
Yeah, you've been beating him with a fairly big stick about what happened with Clinton.
Yeah, but I've never said I believe he was corrupted or dishonest. I believe his judgment was incorrect.
If they asked you to be the special prosecutor, would you accept that role?
No.
If they asked you to be Attorney General, would you accept that role?
That'd be a closer question, because if
How do you say no to the President of the United States if he says, I need you, Rudy, to do this for me?
Well, if it really was just me and I couldn't point to three others that would be just as good or better.
Who's just as good?
Well, I don't know yet. We'll see.
You think Chris Christie's just as good as you?
Chris is an excellent choice for any job in government.
Notwithstanding, he has a close relationship with my brother, the governor of New York. You don't think he's tarred by the Bridgegate situation?
I think the Bridgegate situation was an exaggerated political situation.
2 convictions, all counts.
I know. Convictions.
That's exaggeration?
I think it was exaggerated. Never should have gotten to that.
2 convictions, all counts.
Chris,
I'm just saying, you know, in a world where nobody ever goes to trial.
A good lawyer can convict you in a lot of different ways.
I mean, are you kidding me?
I don't know.
Who is it?
I don't know. I have no idea. Now it's
the same ringtone as my mother, by the way. What is it with you old Italians?
My wife. No, I don't think it's my wife. I don't know who it is. It can't be my mother. Otherwise, it would be.
It'd be Chalem. So, do you have it in you to be Attorney General? Do you feel that you have the energy? Do you feel that you have the desire?
I certainly have the energy, and there's probably nobody that knows the Justice Department better than me.
So nobody's better than you. You just said, hold on, I got you. I finally got you. It's been taking me 35 years. You just said
17 years.
If I couldn't point to 3 other people who are as good as me, then yes, if it's just me. You just said nobody knows it better than I do.
Well, I was an assistant U.S. attorney.
That's right.
I was the Associate Attorney General of the United States, the third-ranking official under Ronald Reagan. I've argued in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. I've argued in almost every circuit. And I tried as a personal lawyer and U.S. attorney over 50 cases.
Right.
And
it's a good resume.
So I know the bottom of the Justice Department, and I know the top of the Justice Department.
Would you be okay leaving your spot at Powell and all the travel around the world and all the different enterprises you're in?
Those are things I would have to give serious thought to. And also, really, my interest in this election, and I know people have a hard time believing it, is, and they have a different view of it, I felt that if Hillary got elected, we were going to move in a socialist direction. And I didn't want to leave a country behind for my children that was moving in that direction. I want to move more in the opportunistic American direction of hard work, good education, straighten out the educational programs, the kind of America my parents left to me. So that was the reason I was working 20 hours a day. Plus, as you know, my close personal friendship with Donald Trump. Getting a job is secondary to me. I want him to have a good administration. And if it's the right fit and everything works, okay. If it doesn't, I'm perfectly happy with that.
Would you accept the position if it came with the condition of, I don't want to go after Clinton, leave it alone, let's focus, we've got a lot of other things, I don't want to create more political...
Well, I think that's a presidential decision also.
So if it came to you that way from the president, then you're all right with it.
But we would have to talk about that. We would have to talk about what the ramifications of that to other prosecutions, to future prosecutions. How would you couch that? Suppose more evidence came forward a year from now that we don't know about now that makes it a much worse situation. I don't think President Obama should pardon her. I don't think that would be right. Because if he pardons her, he's got to pardon about 15 other people who helped her. It wouldn't be fair to pardon her and not pardon the guy who hammered the cell phones. You got to pardon that guy too. You can't have.
But none of those people are looking at any charges.
Well, that guy didn't get immunity.
Right, but he also hasn't had any recommendation of prosecution against him.
Well, that doesn't mean he can't be investigated. The FBI still has an ongoing investigation, and we don't know what it's going to uncover. So you'd have to cut that off.
Although Comey has said several times now, it's not even a close call.
But he has never said anything about the foundation.
Oh, you're talking about the foundation.
Yeah.
You were saying destroying the phones.
But
I thought you meant email.
The emails may very well have been destroyed because the emails show the connection between the State Department and the foundation.
But do you believe that the value of that investigation is worth the political instability it would create?
I told you. I think that's a very close question. I think that somebody should review that very carefully as to how bad is that evidence, and if it isn't as bad as some of the exaggerators think it is, then maybe the best thing to do is to forget about it and move on. If it is really bad, then somebody's got to look at it who's independent.
Well, you won't know until you're in the role. So maybe that'll influence you in terms of your decision. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As you know, my job doesn't change. We got to speak truth to power. If you're there, I look forward to covering it.
I found every one of our sessions excellent. And, you know, here's my view. I was taught this by David Garth. David taught me the following. There's no such thing as a bad question. There's just a bad answer. And you want to get asked the bad questions because you want the constituents to hear your answer to it.
Well, that's why we're here. Not
Thank
to
you.
ask bad questions.
Well, I mean,
tough to get tough questions.
Tough questions. The ones that nail you on the things people are worried about.
Well,
why do you feel this way? Why do you look at it
That's
this
what
way?
we do, or we try to do it every day.
And you do a
Okay?
great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Best to you. Allison. He said me, not you, by the way.
I also like that he said sessions, as though there's a therapeutic quality to this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Chris. President Obama about to meet face-to-face with his successor, President-elect Donald Trump. How will they get past all of the bad birther blood? We will speak with former Obama senior advisor David Axelrod next. About 2 hours from now, President Obama will meet with President-elect Trump. President Obama promising a peaceful transition of power in spite of a very heated election.
Remember, 8 years ago, President Bush and I had some pretty significant differences. But President Bush's team could not have been more professional or more gracious, so I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect.
All right, let's discuss this with former Obama senior advisor and CNN senior political commentator David Axelrod. Hi, David.
Hey, guys, how are you?
You know President Obama very well. So what happens today when he confronts and comes face to face with the man who questioned his birth and his citizenship and his legitimacy?
Well, first of all, I remember very well that period 8 years ago when we were in transition. And he was quite right. President Bush and his whole team were incredibly welcoming to us. I remember Ed Gillespie, who was in my role in the Bush administration, inviting me over to the White House and spending hours with me talking about his job and how it's done and how the White House works, just the mechanics of it. And it was very helpful and it was very welcomed by me. And President Bush himself was kind to all of us during that period. And that was after a campaign that was really predicated on reversing the policies of the Bush administration. President Bush took a beating in that campaign, and yet he saw it as his responsibility to ensure the peaceful transfer of power in a proper way. And I think President Obama did learn from that this is the way it should be done. And I expect that he will be very professional when he meets with Donald Trump this morning, with the president-elect, in talking about the mechanics of how this transition will occur.
So what do you say to the reverse of that notion, that from the angry Democrats, from those who feel this election was won the wrong way and that President Obama should represent that disposition? Is that a fair request of the President of the United States?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's not asking anybody to be happy about the result. I don't think supporters of John McCain or Mitt Romney were happy about the result. And we've had acrimonious elections in the past. What he's saying is respect our democracy, respect the system that says once the election is over, we have one president. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight vigorously over differences on policy moving forward. It does mean that we have one president at a time, and you should start from the at least premise that we should find ways to work together because the success of the country depends on it. So I understand how strongly people feel and how offended they were by some of the things that were done in this campaign. But this isn't about respect for one man. It's about respect for our democracy and for our institutions because those have to endure.
David, what do you think is the future of President Obama's legacy, given that Donald Trump has basically stated that he's going to dismantle as much of it as possible, starting right away with Obamacare?
Yeah, we'll see exactly how this thing moves forward. It's one thing to say, I'm going to dismantle or repeal and replace Obamacare. It's another thing when you realize that 20 million people are getting health coverage under Obamacare today. It's different when you realize that that's the law that made it illegal for insurance companies to ban people with pre-existing conditions from getting insurance, which is incredibly popular in this country. And there are so many other features of this that are very, very popular, even if the name or the headline is not with some people. So how this is done in such a way as not to create massive unhappiness on the other side of the ledger is going to be a challenge for him. But I think President Obama's legacy is much larger than simply the Affordable Care Act. He is the president who led the country through the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. He is a president who came to office when there were 2 wars raging and 180,000 troops in active duty in Afghanistan and Iraq. He's led the country through so many other things, transitions on things like gay rights, education and so on, higher education, access to higher education. There are many, many parts of this legacy that will endure. And maybe the greatest, although it's not as tangible as the others, is he brought dignity to the office of the presidency and honor to the office of the presidency. I think he'll be remembered for that in the future.
8 years, not one personal scandal. I mean, some people say, well, that's too low a bar, but look around you. It's something that is something to be
unusual,
held in
Chris.
esteem. It's unusual, especially because often people are looking for scandal even if it's not actually there. Also, telling to you, Axe, that Rudy just said tax should be the first priority, not Obamacare. Do you think that's a nod to the complication of dealing with Obamacare, that it's more than just a political promise? There are legal and practical problems that may not make it a good first choice.
Yeah, I just don't think that you want your first act to be taking away from the American people something that is of real value and importance to them. I've confront people who've been helped by Obamacare all over the country who have tears in their eyes about what it's meant for them. So I think that they should go slow on that. I know Mitch McConnell said it'll be his first act, and it's red meat for some in the base. But the other thing that I heard Rudy say was still mulling over whether there should be some prosecution.
Well, he wants to get some easy wins, which makes sense for a new administration, especially with a president-elect who's going to be as sensitive as Donald Trump will be to his approval ratings.
Well, do you think, I'm talking about the case of Hillary Clinton, do you think prosecuting Hillary Clinton would be an early win?
I think that Rudy Giuliani has very definite feelings about that may or may not be shared by Donald Trump, president-elect.
I think the president-elect should think long and hard about what that would mean for the country. I think, first of all, I don't think it is warranted from what the FBI director said. So it would look like a political escapade, but really vengeful. And I think it would be a huge mistake. I remember when we took office, there were many people on the left who thought that there were figures within the Bush administration who should be prosecuted for actions that were taken during the Iraq War.
Yeah.
And the president said, we need to look forward and not back. It's a good example.
Well, it's on President Obama a little bit, too. Will he pardon Hillary Clinton? We'll see.
David Axelrod, thank you very much.
Guys,
nice
have
to
a great
see
day.
You too. Donald Trump's transition kicking into high gear. He made a lot of promises for his first 100 days. What can he actually get done? We will speak with former White House Chief of Staff, Governor John Sununu, next. President-elect Donald Trump has 71 days before he officially moves into the White House. His transition team now focusing on the tasks of picking a cabinet and vetting appointees to key departments, many of which require Senate confirmation. Let's discuss it all with John Sununu. He is the former Republican governor of New Hampshire who supported Donald Trump. Congratulations, Governor.
Well, it was an interesting night, wasn't it, Allison? A lot of surprises, but I must admit, for the first time in a long time, I think my kids and my grandkids might see a greater America, so it's good.
Well, let's hope that you are right, and congratulations to your son as well, who won his race.
Thank you. Thank you. Now there's two Governor Sununus.
Yes, that's confusing, but good for you guys. So,
Thank you.
Governor, let's talk about what Donald Trump has promised to do in his first 100 days. Let me put up on the screen his legislative agenda. He says that his action plan for the first 100 days are deliver the biggest tax cut since Ronald Reagan, tariffs to stop companies from going overseas, infrastructure investment, end Common Core, that part of the public school agenda, promote school choice, repeal and replace Obamacare, enforce that or include that child care tax deduction that he's talked about and child care services, build the wall, along the Mexican border, create a task force on violent crime, and rebuild the military, eliminate the defense sequester. You've done this job. How realistic is that?
Well, I think it's realistic to get a good start on all of that. Congress is even when it's your own party, Congress has to be recognized as having an internal process of committee hearings and so on. But I think he can lay out those things with Congress and lay out a path to completion on most of that. Whether it gets all done in 100 days, I'm not sure. I suspect it won't all get done, but certainly enough progress will be made that I think the public will recognize it's on its way.
What do you think about Congress's appetite for being cooperative with a President Trump?
I think with the victory, the size of this victory and the strength of this victory, I think there's going to be a lot more willingness in Congress to follow the agenda that matches the driving force for the victory. Congress needs leadership. And if Donald Trump leads, Congress will respond. People do not understand that the gridlock that we have seen is because, in my opinion, there's been zero presidential leadership.
But explain that, Governor Sununu, because, as we've heard, hold on a second, President Obama, when he took office, went over to Congress to try to get them on board with his jobs plan. And we've all heard the stories of how Eric Cantor and Mitch McConnell had this secret meeting that then was widely reported that they said we're going to block him at every turn. Our main goal is to keep him a one-term president. We are going to say no to everything he wants.
Same thing happened when Bush, the first George Bush came in. The Democrats in Congress were determined to obstruct. They had 260 to 175 in the House, 55-45 in the Senate. But George Bush kept at it. He didn't take the first negative response as reality. You have to remember, Congress was bitter at Ronald Reagan because of Iran-Contra. So Jimmy Baker had to go up and break that logjam. George Bush got personally involved. So a president that's willing to lead and spend political capital can make the change. A president that wants to go down and dictate, which I really do believe Obama went down trying to tell them this is what we're going to do and you got to take it or leave it, they won't respond to that. George Bush showed how it could be done, and I think that's a model even when it's your own party down there. Go down there and work with them to find where the sharp edges have to be removed.
Governor, very quickly, I want to show you the names that have been floated for Donald Trump's cabinet picks. Here are just some of them. You see Rudy Giuliani, you see Newt Gingrich, you see General Michael Flynn, you see Jeff Sessions, who was an early supporter, Reince Priebus, Ben Carson. Do you think that there will be a woman in Donald Trump's cabinet?
Oh, I'm sure there probably will. The most important appointments he has to make is his national security advisor, his chief of staff, and his legal counsel in the White House, and his Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, and his Director of OMB. And in those places, there's certainly room for talented women, not only in those places, but across the cabinet.
Any name you want to float right now?
No, I don't. But I'll tell you one who's not going there.
Oh,
an old,
yes.
cranky former governor.
I don't know who you're referring to. Governor John Sununu, thank you very much. Nice to have you on New Day.
Thanks, Allison.
Chris.
All right, the markets had reacted negatively in the past to Donald Trump, and futures tanked when he won. But guess what? The market did well. In fact, stocks are staging a surprise rally on the heels of Trump's win. So what's going to happen today? Some suggest it may be an all-time high. We have analysis ahead.
The stock market defying conventional wisdom. The chaos that some expected upon Donald Trump being elected did not materialize. So with the market set to open in 45 minutes, what do we expect today? Chief Business Correspondent Christine Romans has it all.
I love covering the markets. Predicting the markets is folly, I'm telling you right now. But I'll tell you, 24 hours ago, I stood here, remember, and it was a freak out. It was for a hot second, there was chaos. And then things really stabilized. And here's where we stand right now. You could see the Dow Jones Industrial Average open at a record high. Never has been so high if it holds here. I mean, that's kind of remarkable considering all the gloom and doom you heard. If Donald Trump were elected president, there could be a global recession because of his trade wars. Well, instead, you've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average really close to riding new highs here. So why? Let's look at the movers yesterday. Bank stocks did great. Huge gains for bank stocks because he has said he would dismantle banking regulation that President Obama put in and Congress put in after the Great Recession. Construction, I mean, things like Caterpillar, a bunch of steel stocks, because they think Donald Trump is going to push through a huge infrastructure build that will be really profitable for those companies. Hospitals, real big losses, crashes for some of the hospitals because they think if he does repeal and replace Obamacare, it could be very disruptive for these hospitals who have seen a whole bunch of new customers, uninsured people who need health care. When you look at global markets, also a bounce back here. Look at this. Remember that big loss I told you about in Tokyo? Completely turned around. London is now turned down a little bit, but Paris and Frankfurt are higher. Gold, though, still up, and that might be a really important note here, guys, because if gold is up, that still shows that there's some concerns and uncertainty. So I predict unpredictability. That is my call.
I think you've said that 2 days in a row. I see you're sticking with that thing, Christine.
I'm sticking with that call.
I like that. Very good.
All right, here's some food for thought for you. A lot of people are discussing right now, why did one person win the popular vote and she's not president, but the Electoral College is, why do we have answers ahead? Campaign controversy. Take a look at the numbers. Clinton won the popular vote, but she lost the electoral vote. This is the 5th time a president has won without the popular vote. Most notably, the last time was in 2000. What does this say about the Electoral College? Why do we have it? Let's discuss with Julian Zelizer, historian and professor at Princeton University and author of The Fierce Urgency of Now. Why do we have this? No other country has it.
Well, this is part of our Constitution. Part of it was to protect small states. Part of it was to protect slave states. And also part of it was we didn't have a democratic ethos in some ways when this country was founded. So it was about electors rather than the populace. It's a relic, though. And many people don't like this system because of what happened the other night.
Right, because if you're going to tell people that every vote counts and get out there and vote, and then you find out that she can lose the popular vote, every vote does not count. If this was based on protecting slave states, what does that mean? How was it going to protect slave states?
Well, it helped small rural states instead of very big populous states. And
because it was an offset for a slave population. Because they couldn't vote, they had to bump up the relevance of those states to make up for the difference in population.
And you still see that dynamic in this election, meaning Hillary Clinton did very well in very diverse, pluralistic states like California, and in smaller states he won by a narrow margin and was able to get the victory.
Can we get rid of the Electoral College?
So there's been many times we've tried to reform it. In 1969 was the biggest effort by Senator Bayh, who is Evan Bayh's father. And it was after the 1968 election was very close. And so there was an effort to reform it. It didn't work. It's
Why? Who wants it?
Constitutional amendment process.
Well, I know. You can do it. Constitutional amendment is tough in lots of different ways.
Often it's a liberal cause. It's the idea that we need a popular system and we need to empower these bigger states. Otherwise, it's biased toward more conservative states. And after 2000, you had a more bipartisan interest in it. After the
so why didn't they
election.
fix it after that?
It's the kind of issue on polls most people support a different kind of system, a popular vote. But it's not an issue people vote on. People want bread and butter issues, and there's not a lot of pressure to get that amendment through.
I have an interesting tweet from Donald Trump. This was after Mitt Romney's loss in 2012. Donald Trump tweeted, "The Electoral College is a disaster for democracy."
Right. That's now all over the place. But it benefited him this time. And that's part of the reason.
He lost if he did it on just
There was a
popular
moment in 2012 it looked like Romney might get more of the popular vote, and he didn't. That's another reason the reform doesn't work. It's often promoted by the losing side. And so it's hard to get that through.
Having taken a breath,
yeah.
What is your gut now on how this election is remembered in history? For what? What will be the biggest memory?
Well, it will be the most controversial, divisive election that we have had in a long time. It will be the election where we had the victor with the least experience in politics of anyone that we've seen. I believe it's an election where the wounds will be deep from the campaign. That were created as a result of the rhetoric and ideas that were put out there by the victor, and we'll see what happens in the first year. And it's also the biggest upset. It is one of the biggest surprises and upsets that we've seen.
Look, I know it's hard to write history in real time, but when you say the wounds will be the deepest, I mean, already the rhetoric coming from the Democratic side, Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, has been President Obama has been one of healing and reconciliation.
Right. Give it a day. It's like the weather. It'll change. And
especially with the Democrats, right?
Sure.
Because have you ever seen the Democratic Party in the modern era less in touch with who they're about and what they're about than right now?
And the Democrats have a fundamental problem. They lost the vote of many blue and working class Americans who should be at the core of their constituency. So they're sitting and scratching their heads and saying, why is there disconnect between the policies we promote and where people are voting? So I think as this gets deeper and deeper into the presidency, those nice words will end.
We'll see if your jaded view takes hold. Professor, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Late night comics wasted no time getting their jokes in order after Donald Trump's big win. Here you go.
The big story is that America woke up this morning and was like,
did I do that?
That's right, Donald Trump is going to be president. Republicans hope he'll keep his promise to build the wall, and Democrats hope he'll keep his promise not to accept the election results.
Our democracy just hoiked up a marmalade hairball with the whole world watching. What we did was the Democratic equivalent of installing an above-ground pool. Even if we're lucky and it doesn't seep into our foundations, the neighbors will never look at us the same way again.
My wife and I went to watch the election returns at a friend's house. And before we left, we put our 8-month-old son to bed, and I was holding him, and I said to him, when you wake up tomorrow morning, we might have our first female president. And then when we came home around midnight, I went into his room, shook his crib until he woke up, and screamed, "We have to get out of here!"
The elites need to learn to laugh less and listen more. And they would have understood a little bit more about this.
Profound.
And look, we heard it early on traveling around the country, right? That's what we started saying. You can joke about Trump. Don't joke about the people behind him.
Look, who doesn't like an Urkel reference? All right, on that note, let's get to Newsroom with Carol Costello. It'll pick up after this very quick break. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm Carol Costello, live in Washington, D.C. President Obama just a couple of hours away from meeting with the man who vows to dismantle the key pillars of his legacy. Behind closed doors, Obama will sit down with his successor, President-elect Donald Trump, in the Oval Office. It's a long-held tradition to assure Americans that even the most bitter foes will work together on a peaceful transition. But few presidential races have been this bitter and polarized. In fact, just hours after Trump's stunning victory, angry protests bubbled up in at least 25 American cities, from New York to San Francisco and Seattle to Nashville. Thousands rallied in the streets to disavow their next president. CNN's Athena Jones previews the Trump-Obama meeting this morning. Jason Carroll looks at the huge challenge of assembling a Trump administration. But let's begin at the White House. Good morning, Athena.
Good morning, Carol. A lot of anticipation of this meeting. Just a couple of hours from now, it's going to get started in the Oval Office, planned for 11 a.m. We do expect to see some video of President Obama meeting with President-elect Trump at the bottom of that meeting. We don't expect him to make extensive remarks, but we could hear some brief remarks. But there's a lot else going on also today at the White House. Melania Trump is going to be meeting with First Lady Michelle Obama. Vice President Biden later on this afternoon will be meeting with Vice President-elect Mike Pence. But a lot of the focus, of course, is going to be on this morning meeting at 11 a.m. between two men who haven't had a whole lot of nice things to say about each other. For months, President Obama has been saying that he doesn't believe Trump is ever going to be president. He's called him temperamentally unfit, uniquely unqualified. On the Trump side, you have the man who led the birther movement, who questioned the president's citizenship and his legitimacy for the office. So it could be an awkward meeting. But one thing the White House is stressing is that you've heard from the president and his staff about how much they appreciated the professional and smooth way that George W. Bush's team handled the transition back in 2008 and 2009. And the president said yesterday in his speech in the Rose Garden that he's directed his staff to follow the example set by President Bush. Now, the White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest says it's too early to say what kind of impact Trump's election will have on President Obama's top policy priorities. But, Carol, we know that Trump has run on plans and promises is to undo many of Obama's legacy items. So, for instance, we expect Trump to get to work right away on repealing and replacing Obamacare. He says he wants to roll back and reverse executive actions on immigration, on regulations of power plants and the like. Trump has also said he wants to withdraw from agreements like the Iran nuclear deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, and the Paris Climate Accord. And we've already gotten some indications from Congress that TPP, that trade bill, is all but dead. So a lot to discuss as these two men to get together, a lot that could change with a Trump presidency. Carol?
All right, Athena Jones reporting live from the White House for us. Thanks so much. Now let's turn to Trump's top priority, filling the thousands of jobs that will shape his administration. CNN's Jason Carroll is outside of Trump Tower with that. Hi, Jason.
And good morning to you, Carol. As I stand here in front of Trump Tower, I'm thinking about how we were standing in front of here last night with thousands of protesters who were out here. Some of those names being thrown out that they were protesting against are some of the names that are on Donald Trump's short list for key cabinet positions. So let's take a look at what lies ahead for the Trump administration. There are 72 days, including today, until inauguration. Some 4,000 appointments that need to be made. 1,100 of those require Senate confirmation. Some of the key positions that are up for grabs, Chief of Staff, and some familiar names on that short list, including Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, Rudy Giuliani, Reince Priebus, Secretary of State, another key position, Senator Jeff Sessions on the short list, along with John Bolton and Senator Bob Corker. Two of the key men who are part of helping Donald Trump get to where he is, Governor Chris Christie and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, speaking out this morning about being part of a Trump administration.
Would you want to be Chief of Staff? Would you want to be Attorney General?
That's when it's called a pregnant pause.
Would you want to be Attorney General?
You really don't think I'm answering any of these questions, do you? You know me better than that. The answer is I am not committed to doing anything in a new administration or not. You know, the bottom line is that I have a job to do to help get the administration ready. If there's some role for me that I want to do and that the president-elect wants me to do, you know, we've known each other for 14 years. We'll talk about it.
Do you have it in you to be Attorney General? Do you feel that you have the energy? Do you feel that you have the desire?
I certainly have the energy, and there's probably nobody that knows the Justice Department better than me.
And Carol, we're just getting word that Trump's motorcade has just left Trump Tower. He's now heading to Washington, D.C. for that meeting with the president. You know, going back to Governor Chris Christie, he says that the Bridgegate scandal that's been hovering over him, he does not think that's going to in any way affect any possible position that he might have with a Trump administration. You know, as we see Trump's motorcade leaving, one of Trump's rallying cries during his whole campaign was drain the swamp. What he's going to do is drain the swamp from Washington insiders, Washington corruption. His critics already, Carol, looking at many of his potential picks and saying all of these people, for the most part, are Washington insiders. Where are the outsiders? Carol?
Okay. Jason Carroll reporting live for us this morning. Thank you. Oh, to be a fly on the wall when President Obama and President-elect Trump sit down in the very same room. Talk about history, as in bad history.
I hope he was born in the United States. If he wasn't, it's the greatest scam in history, not political history, in history.
Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified to be president.
He is the founder of ISIS.
You don't see him hanging out with working people unless they're cleaning his room.
We've got a person in the White House that's having a lot of fun. It's like a carnival act.
He's erratic. If his closest advisors don't trust him to tweet, why would any of us trust him with the nuclear codes?
Ain't American politics grand? Let's talk now. With me now, CNN political commentator and assistant editor of the Washington Post, David Swerdlick. Rebecca Berg is here. She's a CNN political commentator and national political reporter for Real Clear Politics. And Heidi Prisbella. I always have problems with
Prisbella. Sprinkle some vowels in.
I know. I wish I could. She's the senior politics reporter for USA Today. Thanks to all of you for joining me this morning.
Thanks, Carol.
So Heidi, do you think will the two men sit down and say, "Hey, how's the wife and kids"?
No.
No, we won't be there for that part, though. We will see a small portion of this at the end, which President Obama will do justice to the institution itself. And I think that's the way that he maybe gets through this moment, because this has been so personal between these two men. We've seen that Trump, if there was one person that he had gone after even before his unlikely rise in this election, it was trying to basically delegitimize the president, based questioning his citizenship, and secondly, just the efforts. His first priority is going to be to try and basically roll back the president's signature legacy item, which is Obamacare. It's questionable how much they're actually able to do that, because I studied this when I was in Congress, and this reconciliation measure, which requires a lower number of votes to get things done. Using that, you can only peel back certain portions of Obamacare, and so you can't really. It's really a false equivalency. Right. You can't repeal the whole law.
Right. We're going to get into that much later. I just want to go back to this initial meeting, because both men have been so gracious in their remarks after Trump was elected president of the United States, right? So will this meeting sort of be, President Obama will talk to Donald Trump and say, you know what, here's what you can expect. And here's what I think your top concerns ought to be, based on my experience, of 8 years in the White House.
Absolutely. As President Obama said in his remarks yesterday, we should all rally behind Trump and, be rooting for him to succeed. And I think President Obama genuinely does want President-elect Trump to succeed when he is sworn in, because President Obama, anyone who is a lawmaker in this country, clearly cares about what happens to the country. And so I think President Obama wants to give him as many tools as possible, as many pieces of advice as possible to bring that to reality, to make that happen. That said, you can't suddenly, have President Obama trust President-elect Trump as, someone who can necessarily be a good steward in the White House. There's still a lack of trust between these two men, and still some skepticism, certainly. But be that as it may, they both sort of want the same thing, and that's for the country to be in a good place. And so they want to do. So. And so I think today we're going to see a meeting that's probably professional, an exchange of ideas, and
there will be a photo op, right? And afterwards, maybe the two men will say something publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of that peaceful transfer of power that we were talking about. There are a lot of the country is sad about the election of Donald Trump. A lot of the country is happy about the election of Donald Trump. But the job of the president and the president-elect clearly is that peaceful transfer of power. I think that President Obama, and like Rebecca said, and Donald Trump are skeptical of each other, but also both have incentives to try and have a constructive conversation and work together.
So that the protests overnight, clearly we're a divided country. One half of the country is enthusiastic and excited and full of hope, and the other half of the country is, quite frankly, scared. So you would think that the two men would talk about that in their private meeting and find a way to bring the two sides together.
And I think the Democrats, from their part, have made that clear from the very beginning. Very beginning meaning right after the election, Hillary Clinton, in her speech, which is getting a lot of laudits, for the fact that very early on, the first priority she made clear is that we need to, as Americans, honor the time-honored tradition of a peaceful transfer of power. But Carol, no matter how much there's limits to leadership messaging at this point, because people are so angry. And, this is now, from a Democratic point of view, the second major election that we have had where a Republican has taken over, even though a Democrat has won the popular vote. So you are now going to see that rage at the institution that we have seen on the Republican side channeled, I think, through a grassroots Democratic uprising, potentially. I am seeing people already this morning pushing back on the whole notion of the electoral college system, because now we have had two elections like this. And I think there's a lot of questioning about the system that you're now going to see on the left.
Right. I think, though, the salient point is that these two men have to try to figure out a way to bring this country together, because that's the law. That's the way politics works.
And they will do that. They will do that. Will the people listen?
President Trump. Right. Okay. So perhaps one of the things that could be done to draw the two sides together is to drop this, I don't know what to call it against Hillary Clinton, but, to prosecute her in some way is still on the table. In fact, Chris Cuomo asked Rudy Giuliani about that again this morning. Here's what he said.
I think that somebody should review that very carefully as to how bad is that evidence. And if it isn't as bad as some of the exaggerators think it is, then maybe the best thing to do is to forget about it and move on. If it is really bad, then somebody's got to look at it who's independent.
Okay, so the Republicans say, you know, this is necessary. She's a criminal. She got away with something. Democrats would say it's a witch hunt. Just stop it and let's work together. So what do you think will happen?
It's interesting to me that Rudy Giuliani in that interview suggested that, you know, if there's no there, that they could potentially drop this, because this was a campaign promise from Donald Trump. This wasn't just, you know, if the evidence is there, we'll pursue it. He said at his rallies, there will be a special prosecutor if I am president. Now he is going to be president. So there might be some political repercussions for him if he weren't going to pursue that. His passionate supporters, this was a big deal for them. That's why they chanted "lock her up" at his rallies.
Although I will say, in speaking to Trump supporters, even they say, you know, sometimes Donald Trump says things and he doesn't mean them literally. He says them to get things going, to show that he's tough. So maybe he didn't mean that.
So two things, Carol. One is that, you know, there's been a lot of talk in the last 48 hours about this idea that you couldn't or shouldn't have taken everything Donald Trump said literally. I disagree with that. I think that presidents or presidential candidates campaign for a reason. They make promises for a reason. And if they are essentially out on the trail saying things that they don't mean, that's a problem with our system. In the specific case of Secretary Clinton and this legal issue, I think there are two reasons why it would be at least a political mistake for the Trump administration to pursue it. One would be that FBI Director Comey has already said no charges. Number two is that the American people already rendered a judgment on Secretary Clinton. Whether people are happy with it or not is one thing. And she's out of the picture now. He has to move forward, not look back.
All right. I have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining me this morning. I do appreciate it. Coming up in the newsroom. A tall order for Mr. Trump, pulling off all those huge campaign promises and fast. Can he do it? The winds of change in Washington are blowing green on Wall Street, at least today. Markets are looking at a higher opening in just a few minutes, keeping up yesterday's surge after Republicans bring home a win in the White House. Alison Kosik live at the New York Stock Exchange. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. Well, the stock market freak out over Donald Trump winning the election, never materializing, and instead Wall Street giving a warm welcome to President-elect Trump as we watch the Dow get closer and closer to record territory. In fact, this morning we are expected to see the Dow open at its highest level ever. What I think you saw happen yesterday was investors putting aside their concerns about a possible Trump anti-trade policy and instead focusing on a Republican-controlled president and Congress, which may be able to push through programs that many believe could help the economy, like infrastructure, spending, tax cuts, and lighter regulation. These are the kinds of things that can be beneficial to business and stocks. So what were investors buying yesterday? They poured into shares of pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Merck. The thinking that Trump's going to be too focused on undoing Obamacare to pay attention to high drug prices. Defense stocks like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin also got a big boost on the expectation that Trump will push for more military spending. Investors also piling into construction and engineering stocks. Those are the building block companies for increased spending on infrastructure projects, something that Trump is expected to push for as well. So, Carol, as we begin the trading day, we are watching one number. We are watching 18,636. That's the number that we want to see the Dow hit to hit that record high. Carol?
Okay, we'll know in just a couple of minutes. Alison Kosik reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange. Thank you. Repealing Obamacare, building a wall along the southern border with Mexico, defeating ISIS. Just some of the items on Donald Trump's agenda as president. He'll now have a Republican House and Senate behind him. So will Trump be able to push it all through? CNN senior political reporter Manu Raju joins me now with that. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. He will indeed have a Republican Congress, but that doesn't mean he will get everything he wants. Already,
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell throwing cold water on the idea of imposing term limits on members of Congress. He's a six-term Republican, flatly saying that is not going to happen. And other measures, too, causing some consternation within Republican ranks, including that border wall with Mexico that Trump championed on the campaign trail. But many Republicans in Congress are nervous about such a provocative move. Now, yesterday at a press conference, Carol, I asked McConnell 3 times whether he supports a wall on the border with Mexico, and McConnell would not say. Do you support his central policy idea to build a wall on the border with Mexico?
Well, I'm not going to go back and relitigate the events of the past. We have a new president. I'd like for him to get off on a positive start. And I think we should look forward and not backward and kind of rehash and relitigate the various debates we had both internally and with the Democrats over the past year.
What about the wall? That's good. That's a
We're going to be talking to the president about his agenda. Border security is important. I think even our Democratic friends realize we haven't done a very good job of that. And achieving border security is something I think ought to be high on the list.
Do you have a personal preference on the wall?
I want to try to achieve border security in whatever way is the most effective.
Now, today, Trump is scheduled to try to align his agenda with the congressional Republican agenda, meeting in a closed-door session with his running mate, Mike Pence, as well as House Speaker Paul Ryan, who had his differences with Trump this campaign season. It will be an important signal about what direction Trump will choose, whether to push some of those more divisive proposals that made him a hero among his base, or try to work with Democrats on an infrastructure bill. Even Bernie Sanders suggesting that he could be open if Donald Trump were to pursue such an approach. But Donald Trump may also talk about pushing a repeal of Obamacare, and that could enrage the left while unite the Republican Party. And while that repeal may have a chance of passing Congress, passing a replacement bill, Carol, will be much, much harder because of Senate procedures requiring 60 votes to get anything enacted. Carol.
Okay, we're in for quite a ride. Manu Raji reporting live for us this morning. Thank you. Still to come in the newsroom, Obamacare on life support now that Donald Trump's heading to the White House. But what does that mean for the millions of Americans who are enrolled in Obamacare? And will the president-elect talk about that with President Obama at their meeting this morning? We're on it. And good morning. I'm Carol Costello. Thank you so much for joining me. We're live overlooking the White House in Washington. And it's a gorgeous sight, isn't it? It's a gorgeous day here in Washington, D.C. A meeting for the ages about to take place in the White House. President Obama will sit down with Donald Trump to help Mr. Trump get off to a running start. They'll talk about a peaceful transition of power for sure. But some wonder if Mr. Obama will try to convince Mr. Trump to reconsider the repeal of Obamacare. The president signed that into law 6 years ago, and it became one of Obama's signature achievements, as Joe Biden so aptly put it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama.
Remember that? But if Trump has his way, that big deal is about to go down. CNN's chief business correspondent Christine Romans is here to talk about that. Will it be so easy to repeal Obamacare?
I will say for Republicans, it's a curse word. It has been a curse word for some time in a very different way. Look, in a word, Carol, it takes Congress and it takes a plan here to repeal and replace Obamacare. Let's talk about what they could do here. They could repeal and replace it then with a brand new law. That's what Congress could do. They could repeal it just like that and return to the old system, or they could remove parts of the law and keep the broader law, remove parts of it and basically fix it. But what Donald Trump has said he wants to do is repeal and replace it. If he repeals it, you suddenly then have 20 million people who don't have that Obamacare protection. The complaints have been, of course, that the premiums are too high and the implementation of Obamacare has been rough. But the essence of Obamacare, that people with a pre-existing condition would have coverage. Remember, they used to be ostracized by the healthcare system, and that young people can stay on their parents' insurance. Those things, what we're hearing from Republicans is the broad brushstrokes of what is Obamacare would have to stay, quite frankly, because those are the popular parts of it. You can see the market has just opened opening, Carol, and you're going to see a pop here this morning because there is some enthusiasm for other parts of Donald Trump's plans, like, for example, an infrastructure build, for example, cutting regulations across all of the government departments, maybe cutting taxes. So with GOP control of both houses of Congress and the presidency, there's some enthusiasm actually on Wall Street that Donald Trump won't go into a trade war, that maybe many of his trade initiatives will not be implemented, and some of these other things will. In fact, the whole idea of repealing and replacing Obamacare is one reason why you saw hospital stocks crash yesterday, because hospitals have been treating patients who never had access to the healthcare system, right? And you also had drug stocks that soared. Quick point here, Carol, at 18,662 just a second ago, you're talking about a record high for the Dow Jones Industrial Average here. So as people are trying to get a sense of what a Trump presidency would look like for your money, investors are saying, wow, we think he's going to build roads. We think he's going to cut taxes. We think he's going to cut regulations, which would be good for business. And they're enthusiastic. After a freak out yesterday, investors this morning look like they're enthusiastic. I would say watch construction company stocks. I would say watch steel stocks. Anything that has to do with building stuff, I would watch that, and watch the healthcare stocks as well.
Okay, as we continue to watch these numbers, I do want to double down on something about Obamacare.
Sure.
If Obamacare is repealed and 20 million people are affected, right? Because that's how many are enrolled in Obamacare right now.
Yep.
How would that work? Would they just not have insurance anymore? How exactly would that work?
If you just repealed Obamacare, just repealed it, you got 20 million people on the exchanges right now would have to go find insurance, right? Some of those people may not be able to find insurance because they would have a pre-existing condition and they would not be eligible for
So their
insurance.
policies would be canceled, right? Their policies would go away.
If you repealed Obamacare, maybe they would be canceled at the end of the year or they would not be renewed, but you'd have to see what that would look like. What we're hearing from Republicans, though, Carol, is they know it is incredibly unpopular to throw 20 million people out into the wild in the healthcare system. I want to show you the percentage of uninsured Americans. 11.4% of Americans are uninsured today. Obamacare has worked in getting people who did not have insurance into the system, right? But it has cost too much. They underestimated what it would cost to ensure that people were sicker and needed more health care than they thought. What the key here would be is to figure out a way to fix the healthcare system as it is, so that you would have maybe a risk pool that insurers could work from, so that maybe you would have higher fines for healthy young people who don't get into the healthcare system. But what this president-elect is promising to do is to repeal and to replace it. What we need to see is the contours of how they would replace it. And what you're hearing from members of Congress who want this done, Republican members of Congress, they are saying they think that they're going to be able to persuade him to keep the pre-existing conditions and keep young people 26 and under on their parents' health care. But there's no guarantees and there's no real, we don't know for sure yet.
All right, Christine Roman's reporting live, and we'll continue to watch the numbers for you this morning. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Still to come in the newsroom, Russians rejoice as Trump seals the deal. Are we entering an era of thawing relations between the U.S. and Russia? And if we are, what does that mean? While Americans are split in their feelings about a Trump presidency, thousands of miles away, Russians are celebrating. Political leaders raise their glasses in a champagne toast and dine on hors d'oeuvres as Trump was declared the winner. CNN's Clarissa Ward live in Moscow with more. Hi, Clarissa.
Hi, Carol. Well, what a difference a couple of days makes. I can't begin to explain how intense the Russian propaganda against this U.S. election has been for nearly a year now. Russians have been told every day and every night that the election is rigged, that it proves what a failure Western democracy really is. Now we are hearing a very different tune with people here extolling the virtues of America's democracy, and even the head of the Kremlin-owned Russia Today channel saying that she would like to drive through Moscow waving an American flag. Take a look.
This was the reaction of Russia's lawmakers as Donald Trump claimed victory.
Myself and the LDPR party congratulate Donald Trump on his victory.
Local media, too, could barely conceal its delight, running this clip of presidential lookalikes every hour on state TV. Global markets tumbled with the news, but Russia's held strong as President Putin congratulated President-elect Trump.
We have heard his electoral slogans when he was still a candidate. He spoke about resuming and restoring relations with Russia.
In recent years, tensions between the U.S. and Russia have skyrocketed over Ukraine and Syria, and most recently, alleged Russian hacking of Democratic Party emails. With the relationship deteriorating to Cold War levels, anti-Americanism is at its highest here in years. Russian coverage of the election has been particularly scathing of Hillary Clinton, who has even been called a cursed witch. Senator Andrei Klimov says that Clinton is aggressive and anti-Russian, but that relations could improve under Trump.
Do you think that this new Trump era can be a better relationship for Russia?
He declared already that he is ready for such kind of future. Who knows what's happened in reality, but I do hope that we have a chance now.
And he does seem to be quite popular with people on the street here.
Like in America.
People we spoke to seem to agree.
Do you think that he will be a good president? На ваше мнение, он будет хороший президент?
На мое мнение, хороший.
Why do you think he'll be good?
I think he will be good, this man tells us, because he's been a businessman a long time and has had a lot of success. This election became a show, his friend says. Maybe with Trump coming to power, that's going to change, and people's attitudes will become more serious. The relationship between the U.S. and Russia may continue to be difficult, but for now, many here are celebrating.
The Kremlin is being a little more tempered in their response officially. That, Carol, is because Trump is still a wild card, and there are a lot of thorny issues between U.S. and Russia that still need to be resolved. Carol?
All right, Clarissa Ward reporting live for us this morning. Thank you. So what would a Trump relationship with Russia look like? Let's talk about that. I'm joined by Jill Doherty, Global Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center and former CNN Moscow Bureau Chief, and William Courtney, a former U.S. Ambassador to Georgia and Kazakhstan. Welcome to both of you. So Jill, what does Mr. Putin exactly want from Donald Trump?
Well, you know, there's a personal relationship, and they've heard all the right words. You know, Mr. Trump wants a better relationship. Why don't we get along with Russia, et cetera. But when the rubber hits the road, it's not just that personal relationship. It's some of the policies. And I think, you know, if you wanted to name like three, one would be Crimea. Remember the part of Ukraine that Russia annexed a couple of years ago? They want that recognized by the United States. And Donald Trump has said, I might think about that. We might do that. Now, there's a long way between saying that sounds like maybe a good idea and actually doing it. But that's one thing that President Putin would very much like. The other thing that's probably even more important is sanctions. Sanctions that were imposed because of Ukraine and because of Crimea. These economic sanctions are hurting Russia, and it's a big priority for the government to get them removed. So I think there's a feeling that maybe if the relationship improves, they could get rid of the sanctions. And then overall, better relations. But, you know, really for Mr. Putin, it's transactional. He wants you know, real things, not just kind of a buddy-buddy relationship with Donald Trump.
Interesting. Also, William, I think that Russia yearns again to be a superpower, right? It's not a superpower right now. Its economy is in the tank, right? And to appear on the same stage with the American president might give the illusion that Russia is again a superpower.
It certainly contributes to the idea that Russia is a great power, which it is. It's a large country in between China and Europe, two of the three richest markets in the world, has a lot of potential to influence both global affairs and affairs closer to home. The problem for Putin is that just establishing a relationship with President Trump will not be enough. In order to improve relations, there have to be some real changes, and that could be in Syria, more cooperation. It could be pulling Russian troops out of eastern Ukraine, where there's a simmering conflict, or it could be something else. For example, there's a nuclear arms treaty, the INF treaty, which Russia is apparently violating. So some kind of concrete progress has to be made in order to have a better relationship.
Okay, so but see, I just want to go back to that notion because I know that Putin does yearn to be very respected on the world stage and to have a good relationship with the United States, maybe be invited to the United States, for a State House dinner or something like that. Is that something that Putin would want, Jill?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you look at the way they have been injected into this presidential campaign in the United States, here in the U.S. we say, oh, isn't that terrible? Russia, is involved in the U.S. election. But in Russia, they're ecstatic. I mean, they are thrilled, and I'm using that word, technically, they are thrilled that Vladimir Putin and Russia are center attention in this election, have been in this election campaign, because it means that they're back on the world stage again. They don't like being ignored. That's one very basic part of President Putin's foreign policy. Doesn't want to be ignored, and he wants to be at the table on any major decision. So, look at what he said when he said, oh, maybe we can improve relations, congratulations, as he gave it to Donald Trump. He also said on the basis of equality and mutual respect. And what that means is that Russia wants to be back in the position it had as the Soviet Union, as a major superpower. And as we just heard, it's not economically or militarily, but it is key. It plays a very key role, sometimes just as a spoiler in relations, but it's important. They do play an important role, but we will have to define how newly minted President Trump can actually establish some type of concrete relationship.
It's just fascinating. And my final question for you, William, is why does Putin dislike Hillary Clinton so much?
President Putin believes that Mrs. Clinton was promoting color revolutions, popular uprisings, democratic uprisings against authoritarian rulers around the world, including in Ukraine and Georgia, for example, neighbors to Russia. So he kind of thinks that President Trump will be more of a realist. He'll pull back a bit and not be so involved. He'll be more accommodating with authoritarian rulers around the world.
Interesting. Thanks for the fascinating conversation. Thanks to both of you, Jill Doherty, William Courtney. Appreciate you stopping by. Breaking news out of Wall Street right now. The Dow opening at an all-time high after Donald Trump's big win. Take a look. Yep, 18,700 points. Wow. We'll keep an eye on it. I'll be right back. While millions of I'm sorry, I'm gonna ad-lib over these pictures first so you can understand why we're showing you these. I apologize. We're taking a look at Reagan National Airport here in Washington, D.C. As you know, Donald Trump left the Trump Tower in New York City earlier this morning. He was on his way to the airport to board a plane. He will be flying into Reagan National and then traveling to the White House to sit down with a short meeting with President Obama. And the two men will talk about the peaceful transition of power. And then we believe that the two men will make public remarks after that meeting just to calm things down in the country and to show that, this is a democracy and this is how a democracy works and all will be well despite it all. At least with one half of the country, right? So when Mr. Trump arrives at Reagan National, I'll bring you back out there now. All right, now, while millions of Americans do celebrate that Donald Trump victory, others have mobilized in anger across the country in at least 25 cities. Thousands marched in protest against his win. In Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, here in Washington, D.C., frustrated men and women protesting at Trump properties, carrying anti-Trump signs, even burning a papier-mâché Trump head. There were 120 arrests across the country. So let's talk about why these people are protesting. I'm joined by Zoe Hanna. She's a senior at the University of Pittsburgh. She helped organize some of the protests that took place in Pittsburgh. Good morning, Zoe.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. So I'm just curious, Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. So why protest now?
Yeah, well, we've been protesting. When you see the Black Lives Matter protests, Fight for 15 protests, Students Against Debt, these are things that we've been protesting throughout the campaign and even before that.
Well, but still, I'm going to interrupt you here because, yes, there were protests before the election, but now the election has taken place and the people have spoken. So why continue to protest?
Yeah, I think right now the protests are mostly about solidarity and being together. People are really scared and sad. Basically, anybody who is not a white man doesn't know if they're going to be safe in this country for the next 4 years. And even if everything is going to be fine, the shock that people were feeling on Tuesday night and on Wednesday is just so paralyzing. And I think people are hitting the streets because they're really angry and they're really scared and they need to be together.
Well, tell me, you say people are scared. What specifically do they fear happening?
I mean, for example, the comment that President Trump or President-elect Trump made about grabbing women, that specific event has happened to me with somebody else. So, like these moments where you see somebody who's going to be our president bragging about the sexual assault that's happened to you, that's terrifying. It makes me feel like I don't know if I'm going to be safe on the streets. I've heard hundreds of stories already about people being antagonized for their skin color, or I know of a woman who had a hijab ripped off of her in public. It's a violent climate right now.
Mm-hmm. So there is a good portion of America who they're very enthusiastic about a Trump presidency. And I just want you to listen to a few of them to see if there's any middle ground. Let's listen.
My health insurance alone, just for me, you're looking at almost $360 a month.
Got a notice the other day saying my Social Security is going up $3.69. Well, boy, I can get a loaf of bread now. But, I've worked all those years and I see all that money went in Social Security and I'm not benefiting really.
Everybody's sick and tired of the lies.
Okay, so a lot of Trump supporters have fears about the economy. They want Mr. Trump to fix the economy. They want wages to rise so that they can have a better life. So surely the people who are anti-Trump can relate to that.
Of course, yeah, and I think that's what's so sad right now is that the DNC really overlooked this entire group of people that, were forgotten, and that's why Trump won. People felt like they weren't being heard, and they wanted to speak out, and now they have somebody who they feel represents them. But I think Trump's campaign relied on fear-mongering, and it's not rooted in truth or reality. So I think people voted for him because they were scared, and I don't think that he's going to be able to make it better.
But here's the thing that Trump supporters would say. If young people felt so strongly anti-Trump, why didn't more of them go out and vote for Hillary Clinton?
I wish that I had a better answer for that question. It's so sad to me. I mean, I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard on Twitter that 11,000 people wrote in Harambe on their ballots. And I can probably bet that those are young people. And it's so upsetting that people just threw out their chance to have their voice heard. Especially right now. And I think it's because this is just a time of complete confusion and desperation. I don't think young people realize that their votes count and matter. I think a lot of people are disillusioned because they had a lot of trust in Bernie Sanders, and he was treated really unfairly during the primaries. And because of that, he didn't win, and young people didn't trust Hillary Clinton. And then it kind of culminated in...
I understand. Thank you so much, Zoe Hanna, for being with us this morning. I do appreciate it. The next hour, CNN Newsroom after a break. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm Carol Costello, live in Washington, D.C. President Obama just 1 hour away from meeting with the man who vows to dismantle the key pillar of his legacy. President-elect Trump arriving any minute now at Reagan National Airport just outside of Washington. You're looking at live pictures there. Trump will then be whisked to the White House in a motorcade similar to this one that whisked him from his New York home just last hour. You can see there, or you're going to see shortly, Trump waving to the onlookers there in New York City. Once he arrives in Washington, Trump and President Obama will meet privately inside the Oval Office. It's a long-held tradition to assure Americans that even the most bitter foes will work together on a peaceful transition. But few presidential races have been this bitter, this polarized. We're covering all the angles for you this morning as our government shifts to a Trump presidency. Let's begin, though, with that Trump-Obama meeting. Athena Jones live at the White House. Hi, Athena.
Hi, Carol. This is not the meeting that President Obama was hoping to have or expecting to have. We've heard him say for months that he didn't expect that Trump would ever be president. Well, Donald Trump is going to be president. We know his plane took off not too long ago from New York on his way here for that meeting. We do expect to see video pictures of these two men sitting down and talking to each other at the bottom of that meeting. We expect we could hear some brief remarks from President Obama. Don't expect him to give extensive remarks or necessarily take questions, but certainly a lot of energy and attention is focused on this meeting. And Carol, we know that these two men have not had a lot of nice things to say to each other, but we also know that the White House takes very seriously this transition. We heard the president talk about it yesterday during his remarks in the Rose Garden about how peaceful transition of power is a hallmark of our democracy. We've heard the president and his staff talk about how much they appreciated the way that President George W. Bush and his team handled the transition back in 2008 and 2009. And so President Obama has instructed his staff to follow the George W. Bush example when it comes to the transition. Now, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest has said it's too early to say how Trump's election could affect President Obama's top policy priorities, but we know that Trump ran on promises to undo much of President Obama's legacy. So we expect him to hit the ground running, working on several things like repealing and replacing Obamacare, also reversing some of the president's executive actions on things like immigration and power plant regulations. We also know Donald Trump has said he wants to withdraw from agreements like the Iran nuclear deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, and also the Paris Climate Accord. And we've already gotten some indications from Congress that trade deal, TPP, is all but dead. So there's a lot to discuss, a lot on the table, and we'll have to wait and see how this meeting shapes up and how it turns out. Carol?
All right, Athena Jones reporting live. Thanks so much. Now let's turn to Trump's top priority, filling the thousands of jobs that will shape his administration. CNN's Jason Carroll has that. He's outside of Trump Tower in New York. Hi, Jason.
Outside of Trump Tower, Carol, where it's all clear now. Last night, as we were staying out here, as you know, there were thousands upon thousands of protesters standing in front of Trump Tower, many of them shouting some of the names being considered in a Trump administration. The Trump camp, for its part, moving forward with the transition. Let's look at a breakdown of what lies ahead. Some 72 days, including today, until Donald Trump's inauguration. 4,000 plus appointments up for consideration. 1,100 of those require Senate confirmation. Some of the key positions being looked at: Donald Trump's chief of staff, some of the names being floated out there: Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Reince Priebus, of course, also under consideration. Secretary of State, another key position, Senator Jeff Sessions, his name out there, along with John Bolton, Senator Bob Corker. Two of the names being considered, one of them I've already mentioned, Rudy Giuliani, and of course Chris Christie, both of them speaking out this morning about being part of a Trump administration.
Would you want to be chief of staff? Would you want to be attorney general?
That's what it's called a pregnant pause.
Would you want to be attorney general?
You really don't think I'm answering any of these questions, do you? You know me better than that. The answer is I am not committed to doing anything in a new administration or not. You know, the bottom line is that I have a job to do to help get the administration ready. If there's some role for me that I want to do and that the president-elect wants me to do, you know, we've known each other for 14 years. We'll talk about it.
Do you have it in you to be attorney general? Do you feel that you have the energy? Do you feel that you have the desire?
I certainly have the energy, and there's probably nobody that knows the Justice Department better than me.
going back to Chris Christie, he also said that he did not believe the Bridgegate scandal would in any way sort of hover above him in terms of trying to secure a position if he were asked. Also, Christie weighing in on the Trump children. You know, they were very active throughout this campaign, advising Donald Trump throughout the campaign. There's been some suggestion that perhaps maybe one of his children, Ivanka or Trump Jr. or Eric, might be interested in one of the positions up for grabs, Carol. But Christie's saying that he suggested that the Trump children would be more interested in running the business rather than being part of their father's administration. Carol.
Jason Carroll reporting live from New York City. Thanks so much. So let's talk about that and more. David Lauter is with me. He's the Washington bureau chief from the Los Angeles Times. Thomas Burr joins me. He's the Washington correspondent for the Salt Lake Tribune. And Asma Khalid is back. She's a political reporter at NPR. Welcome to all of you. So, wow. So, David, to be a fly on the wall, right? When President Obama sits down with President-elect Trump.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a meeting. I mean, these two have said some pretty nasty things about each other for quite a while now. But, the president has prided himself all along on not having bumps in the road. No drama, Obama. That was his slogan, and I think he's determined to stick to that in this transition. That he wants it to be smooth, he wants it to be seamless. He's told his aides and his advisors that they need to be ready to turn over power in a seamless fashion. Even though this is someone that they have campaigned very toughly against.
Yeah, because it wasn't no drama, Obama, during the campaign, right?
It sure wasn't.
Right, and I just want to remind people how vicious it became on both sides. Let's listen.
I hope he was born in the United States. If he wasn't, it's the greatest scam in history, not political history, in history.
Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified to be president.
He is the founder of ISIS.
You don't see him hanging out with working people unless they're cleaning his room.
We've got a person in the White House that's having a lot of fun. It's like a carnival act.
He's erratic. If his closest advisors don't trust him to tweet, why would any of us trust him with the nuclear codes?
So, Asma, it's endlessly fascinating to me that politicians are able to I'll forget all about those mean things that the other person said about me, and I'm going to sit down and be very professional.
And I think in the case of these two men, too, it's very personal. I mean, Donald Trump is the man who sort of spearheaded the birther movement, questioned the legitimacy of President Obama, not only, whether or not he was born in the United States, but whether or not he was sort of legitimately the correct and rightful president of the United States. And I think that this is a really strange moment for America. I mean, here we have the country's first black president who will be followed by a man who, unleashed some very unpopular racist sentiments in the country and was ultimately at times, endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan. And that's a very sort of, I think, strange moment for the country.
It is a strange moment for the country, Thomas, because the country is so very divided. On one hand, you have millions of Trump supporters enthusiastic, hopeful that the country will improve. And on the other hand, you have these protesters, like the protester I interviewed last hour, she is afraid of what's to come.
Isn't that why this moment is so important right now, right? This is why, it's been a very divisive campaign. The United States is very divided right now. But then you can have them together in the Oval Office. You have them talking about working together and making a seamless transition. This is all about setting the tone for America to say it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. I have heard from more than one Trump supporter that Mr. Trump doesn't mean the things he says literally. He says them to cause a reaction and to get things done, but he doesn't necessarily mean for them to actually occur. Is there something to that?
There may be. I mean, I think all politicians, as you said, they campaign in a way to generate a reaction, get support, and then when they get to governing, it's a little different. But, this is part of the strength of why the American democracy works, that for more than 200 years now, we've had this tradition, with the notable exception of the Civil War, that you can have strong disagreements, you can even hate each other, but at the end of the day, you follow the will of the people and you transfer power according to the rules. Mm-hmm. And that's what's allowed this country, as diverse and rambunctious it is, to function.
The other meetings that will take place today, Asma, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, will meet the future First Lady, Melania Trump, and Mike Pence will sit down with Joe Biden. So it's sort of like a kumbaya moment for the two parties.
It is. And I mean, and we know that Melania Trump has said that at times, she admired the First Lady. She admired her style. So I think that will be sort of a rather gracious meeting. I think that, Joe Biden and Mike Pence, sort of have known each other over the years. Mike Pence served in Congress. So that, I think, is an interesting meeting. I think the meeting, though, that everyone is so keen to understand and sort of see what will transpire is the meeting between President Obama and Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I know they'll say a few words maybe after the meeting publicly to make the country feel better.
Yes, it'll be very nice. I don't think they're going to say anything mean anymore. But it's those private conversations that I really wish we were able to bug the White House sometimes.
Oh man, you're not kidding. Thanks to all of you for being with me this morning. Thanks so much. Coming up in the newsroom. We're still waiting for Donald Trump's arrival here in Washington for that big meeting with the president. The president-elect's contract with America, a robust plan for the first 100 days. I'll talk to a former senator who's been working with the Trump campaign on a transition plan. The Trump campaign was all about promises. The first 100 days are about action. Donald Trump says he has a plan to change Washington, to drain the swamp, a change that includes term limits for Washington, renegotiating trade deals like NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, and securing funds for a border wall that Mexico will reimburse. So let's talk about that. I'm joined by President of the Heritage Foundation and former South Carolina Senator Jim DeMint. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Carol. Love your set. What a great view.
It's beautiful, right?
Yes, it is.
I know. You look. Washington's a beautiful place.
Yes, it is.
But Donald Trump wants to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that first term limits,
yeah.
because some lawmakers aren't so for term limits because some of them have been in office for a very long time.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible?
I think it is possible. I think it would be one of the best reforms for Congress. I lived by term limits. I ran on them 6 years in the House and 2 terms in the Senate. And there's some downsides of losing the institutional knowledge, but frankly, I think on balance it could be one of the best reforms here if people came to do a job and go home rather than make a long-term career. The idea of a citizen statesman.
Long-term lawmakers like Mitch McConnell will say, sure, I'm going to help you push through term limits in Congress.
Well, the way we had to do it, I mean, back in the 90s was, okay, yeah, we're going to pass it, but grandfather you in, Mitch, then you can serve 2 more terms after we pass it. And you'd have to do something to accommodate folks who've been there and been planning on it. But I like the idea, and I don't know if you can get enough support in Congress or not to do it, but about 70% or more of Americans think it's a good idea. So that's a good start.
It is a good start. Let's talk about Obamacare and repealing Obamacare, because Mr. Trump says that's one of the things he wants to do immediately.
Yeah.
Will that be easy?
Yes, it is easier than most things here. Frankly, Republicans could pass a repeal of Obamacare and have it on the president's desk the day he's inaugurated. Because of Senate procedures with reconciliation in the budget, they can do that with 51 votes. They did it last year as a trial run. The House and the Senate passed it. So we know how to pass a repeal.
So that's a way of getting past the filibuster, because you don't have quite enough votes in the Senate, Democratic votes to
You can legitimately do that because it's a budget item. So if Republicans don't do that, frankly, Carol, there are no more excuses for Republicans. I think that's one of the things that helped Trump get elected is Republicans have been saying, oh, give me the House and we'll do this. And then they said, well, we don't have the Senate. No, we got the Senate. No, we don't have the White House. There are no more excuses. Obamacare.
What about the 20 million people who are enrolled in Obamacare? If it's repealed on Mr. Trump's first day in office, what happens to them?
Well, you have to sunset it, and the bill is set up that way where you transition away from it. But most people who've got insurance from Obamacare have just been stuffed into Medicaid. And the private insurance plans, if we create the competitive environment that Trump has talked about, will create better policies at a lower price. And so we need to do that. We promised the American people we would do that. And if the Republicans don't have that on his desk the day he's inaugurated, then it's a bad start for a Republican Congress.
Let's talk about the wall, because that's another signature idea from Donald Trump. A lot of people don't believe he can actually build a wall because, A, it's really expensive, and you have to come up with the money from somewhere, and we don't have it right now.
Well, Carol, actually, I helped to pass a law before Bush left the White House that authorized 700 miles of double-layer fencing. That means there are 2 high fences with a road in the middle so you can patrol it. Part of that, about 35 miles or so, has been built, and it's been proven that it actually works. It's not an unfriendly gesture to Mexico. What it is creating a border just like you have a fence in your backyard that's going to create better neighbors. Right now,
so it's more realistic that it's not an actual wall, but it will be fencing.
Yeah, fencing. Yeah, to build a brick wall is not as secure as a double layer of fencing, and so whatever you call it, we need to control our borders because right now, human trafficking, arms trafficking, drug trafficking, and illegal workers are not helping America, and so I'm hoping this is something that the Republicans can do right away because it's just a matter of funding a current law.
Let me ask you about the fear out there from undocumented immigrants who have children born in the United States.
Right.
They're living in fear right now. Undocumented immigrants, children who are brought into this country by their parents, who are many of them going to college. They fear that at any moment they'll be arrested by INS agents and taken back to a country they don't know. Do they have a right to be fearful?
Well, it's a sad situation, Carol, and as you describe that situation, the one thing we don't want to do is continue to do this for another 10 or 20 years, to drag people in who are not citizens, who don't know how they stand.
Well, let's just talk about the citizens
or
not the citizens, the undocumented immigrants that are already here.
The beginning of this discussion has to be to stop it. To control our borders and respect our heritage of immigration by creating a program where people can come and go legally. A number of people who are living and working here now would like to be on a guest worker program so they could go home. And that's the way it was traditionally in America.
But I think most people would agree with that, right? Both Democrat and Republican.
Would,
I'm talking about the 11 million people who are here who are really scared right now, who are scared there's going to be this deportation force put together to eject them from the country.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. Trump has emphasized the folks who've committed crimes will be deported. We will do whatever needs to be done in a reasonable way. But everyone seems to defer the conversation about controlling our borders and having an immigration policy by saying, oh, what do we do with those who are already here? We can talk about that once we have ability to control our borders and to have a way that we can have legal immigration. There are millions of people waiting to come to America legally, and we make it so hard for them. And the people who've come and done it the right way and paid all the money to lawyers to become naturalized citizens, we need to respect what they did when they obeyed the law. So that's just a philosophy. I think, I believe Trump is going to bring that to the White House, but that discussion...
I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment because my executive producer, Michelle, is telling me to go to the White House and Athena Jones.
Okay.
Because that big meeting's about to take place.
That's more important than what we're doing here.
I'm so sorry, Senator DeMint. Yes. So Athena Jones, you see any action there?
No action yet, but I'm told that the action could be happening very soon. I'm not clear on whether Donald Trump's plane has already touched down or exactly where he is en route, but I'm getting indications that he may have arrived at least to Washington, D.C. early. And we've been talking about how awkward this meeting could potentially be because these are two people who have not had a lot of nice things to say about each other. We didn't even get into back in 2011 that White House Correspondents' Dinner where President Obama had some fun making jokes, poking fun at Donald Trump.
Athena, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second because we're seeing like a pretty incredible picture, actually. Isn't it amazing?
Oh, there you go.
We can take a live picture of the Trump plane in the air, about to land right behind me at Reagan National Airport, and of course, then a motorcade will take President-elect Trump onto the White House. So continue, Athena.
Well, I was just saying it is interesting to see this is probably unprecedented, the president-elect landing in his own plane emblazoned with his name. But this is going to be a very interesting meeting. A lot of attention on this meeting, of course, and this is just one of many meetings that President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence will be having today. They're also going to be meeting with House Speaker Paul Ryan, with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. We know that Vice President-elect Pence is going to be meeting with Vice President Biden, and that Melania Trump is going to be meeting with First Lady Michelle Obama. So a lot of talk going on when it comes to this transition. And we do expect to hear from the president at the bottom of this meeting. We'll certainly see video of the two men sitting side by side in the Oval Office. But we do expect the president could make some brief remarks. Nothing extensive, we're told to expect, but certainly we expect we could hear from them. And there's, of course, a lot to discuss. We've talked about all of the things that Trump says he wants to change about President Obama's policies, but there are also just some nitty-gritty things to talk about when it comes to a transition. It is a massive effort. It's one that the White House team and folks around the White House have been working on for nearly a year. And so there's a lot to discuss. We also expect that Trump, President-elect Trump, could have some questions of his own. So there's no telling how it's all going to go down. We've been talking about how great it would be to be a fly on the wall in that room, given some of the things that the two have said about each other. I think you played it just a few minutes ago,
and
but
Athena,
we'll see.
It's just, I just want to just talk about this incredible sight we're witnessing, because right behind me, Mr. DeMint and I can see the Trump plane about to land at Reagan National, and the motorcade, of course, will then take Mr. Trump onto the White House. I also want to bring in Manu Raju. He's CNN's congressional correspondent, and also a man who knows all about the inner workings of the Oval Office, Ron Christie, not Chris Christie, Ron Christie, and he served as a special assistant to President George W. Bush. Hi, Ron.
Good morning, Carol.
Good morning. So your feelings as you see Mr. Trump's plane about to land at Reagan National?
It's an incredible sight, Carol. For having been with President George W. Bush and Vice President Cheney on January 20th on 2001, I can tell you this is a very exciting time, and it's a very busy time. The president-elect right now is on his way to the White House to meet with the President of the United States. They have a lot to talk about. Beyond the 4,000 jobs in the federal bureaucracy that President-elect Trump has to fill, it's how do you transition to power? How do we, living in the greatest democracy in the world, have that peaceful transition, the handoff of the baton from one president to another? So as we look here at the monitor and as we see the plane about to land and about to taxi, this will be a very exciting day for Mr. Trump, as well as the congressional elected leadership, as we move to a new legacy here in the United States of a smooth and very peaceful transition to power.
And that's a wonderful thing. Ron Christie, you stay right there. Jim DeMint. Wolf Blitzer has joined me, and I'm about to depart for this historic moment. And
This is really pretty amazing when you think about it. A lot of people, when he decided he was going to run for president, really did not take it all that seriously. A lot of Republicans didn't take it seriously. We know at least 16 or 17 Republican presidential wannabes, senators, governors, didn't take it all that seriously. And all of a sudden, they take it very, very seriously. He got the Republican nomination, and then he became president-elect of the United States, and now he's about to meet with the President of the United States in the Oval Office. I'm sure there'll be some other moments. He'll take him on a little tour. This is history.
Well, this is a very important moment, too, because the country is very much divided. You know, thousands of people across the country protested last night, and I wanted to ask you about that, too, Senator DeMint. Mm-hmm. What does Mr. Trump and Mr. Obama say today that will bring the country together?
Well, just the fact that they're getting together is symbolic. I mean, it should soothe a lot of tensions because there's been no deeper disagreements than between these two during the campaign, and they've said some pretty rough things about each other, and the fact that they can put that behind them and come sit down together is a good signal for America, a positive and nonviolent transition of power, and I'm hopeful that the whole transition will work that way.
Have you ever experienced a time when the country's been this divided, Wolf?
Yes, the country has been divided on many occasions in our more than 200-year history. There have been major problems, and of course the Civil War. The Vietnam War, that deeply divided the country. There's a moment now where the President of the United States and the President-elect, and we're about to see it, they can take that first initial step in healing. And I know that President Obama wants to do for Donald Trump, the president-elect, what President Bush did for him during that transition. He was very gracious, spent a lot of time, they spoke, and President Obama, who was then still a junior senator from Illinois, was so grateful to President Bush for the way he handled that transition. And based on all the conversations I've had, I know that the President Obama, wants to do the same thing for the President-elect. Look, they disagree on almost everything, and there's a bitter history there going back to the whole birther movement and all of that. But that's the past. They both have responsibilities right now that go way beyond their personal history, if you will.
Let's go back out to the White House and check in with Athena Jones. So exactly how will this meeting go down? We see the Trump plane landing at Reagan National Airport, right? Athena's not there? Okay, I'll ask Wolf because I'm sure you know the answer to this question. So how exactly will it go down? Will President Obama come out and greet Mr. Trump and then escort him into
I'm
the Oval Office?
I'm sure what they are doing, what they have done, and there's a whole history. I'm sure that President Obama will want to do almost exactly what President Bush did for him. They'll walk on, I assume they'll walk on that colonnade outside the Rose Garden. There'll be obviously a moment inside in the Oval Office. They'll have their meeting, and then the cameras will come in, reporters will come in. There'll be that traditional photo opportunity, and we'll hear from the president. We'll probably hear from the president-elect. Reporters will then shout a few questions. We'll see if they answer any of those questions before they're whisked out. That's the tradition. That's what we'll see, and I assume at the same time, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, will welcome the incoming First Lady, Melania Trump, and they'll have a little meeting as well.
And Mike Pence will meet with Joe Biden
at
today
some
as
point,
well.
yes.
Yeah.
And Mike Pence will get ready to move into his residence over on Massachusetts Avenue, not too far away from where we are right now at that Naval Observatory.
We have Manu Raju standing by. He's our congressional correspondent. So will Democratic and Republican lawmakers be watching for President Obama's remarks and Mr. Trump's remarks after this meeting ends, Manu?
Absolutely. They'll want to hear the signals that the president will make after this meeting. I'm sure you'll hear probably gracious remarks from President Obama, similar to ones that he made yesterday. But of course, those are often things you hear after an election. The proof will really be in the pudding once legislation starts happening, once each side begins to push their policies and what direction specifically the Trump administration will want to take initially coming in. Will Donald Trump want to try to push bills that will actually win Democratic support? Or will he actually try to do things that will rally Republicans behind him, like trying to repeal Obamacare, but that actually would prompt a stiff Democratic opposition? That is one. Those are things that actually will be discussed after this White House meeting today, when Donald Trump goes and meets with House Speaker Paul Ryan behind closed doors as they try to align their agenda. And then afterwards, Donald Trump meeting with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in his office in the Capitol, all part of an effort by Republicans to sync up, because the Republican leaders, Carol, just are not clear exactly on what Donald Trump wants to do as soon as he gets into office. And there is not much time between now and then to really align their agenda. So today, a critical day, not just for the passing of the torch between President Obama and Donald Trump, but also for Republicans to try to figure out what comes next.
All right. Jim Acosta is also standing by at the White House. We know that Mr. Trump has had a contentious relationship with the press, and it kind of makes you wonder what the relationship will be like come January, Jim.
Yeah, Carol, the way I've been describing it is it's sort of like we've discovered a new species in the animal kingdom. We do not know what kind of president Donald Trump will be. Carol, what we have to go off of is what we saw during the campaign. What we saw during the campaign when it comes to his relationship with the news media, I witnessed it firsthand. He referred to the news media as the disgusting media, the dishonest media. He called us crooks and thieves and liars and scum and so on. There were reporters covering his campaign who were banned from his rallies periodically. There were reporters I know from the Washington Post and BuzzFeed, for example, who were simply turned away at times during this election. He had something of a press enemies list, and eventually cooler heads prevailed inside the campaign, and Mr. Trump relented, and they started allowing those reporters into his rallies. So yes, and I think it is unclear what happens after January. I assume President-elect Trump will want to have press conferences here at the White House, in the East Room of the White House, in the briefing room of the White House. But if a reporter gets on his nerves, challenges him too hard, as my colleague Katie Tur did at times over at NBC and other colleagues, will he call that person out and go after that person? We just don't know about those things. But, you know, I think, Carol, that nobody, as I like to say about the press, nobody cares about us. You know, we could bellyache until the cows come home. Nobody cares about us. What really matters is what President-elect Trump is going to do for the country. And I think what Manu was saying was exactly right. He has to meet with the House Speaker, Paul Ryan. He has to meet with the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. They will be with him come January as the leaders of this Congress, presumably. And they're going to have to hammer out this agenda. And as Manu was saying, we are going to find out soon enough which Donald Trump we're going to see in the Oval Office. Is he going to be the president who wants to immediately build a wall on the Mexican border, who immediately wants to repeal Obamacare, who immediately wants to open up the libel laws in this country so he can go after the press, as he suggested during the campaign? Or is he going to, as he was saying during his gracious victory speech on election night, is he going to pursue things that have broader appeal, like infrastructure? That is something that Hillary Clinton talked about out on the campaign trail. Joe Biden talks about it. Is he going to pursue veterans health care reform? That is something that he talked about quite a bit on the campaign trail. Nobody's really going to argue with that. And so if he pursues a more bipartisan agenda, of course he will have a chance to mend some fences and lower the temperature here in Washington. But Carol, I have to tell you, I was in Midtown Manhattan last night trying to get to the train station, and it was difficult because there were 10,000 people protesting out in front of Trump Tower. There is a large segment of this population, and Donald Trump is going to have to deal with this, that does not view him as a legitimate president. And I know that is going to be hard stuff for people to swallow, but it's just the truth. And this is a difficult time for this country. He did not win the popular vote. You know, and people like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and so forth, Nancy Pelosi, my guess is will remind him of that from time to time if he decides to take too partisan tact here in Washington. You know, there's also this story that came out in the Washington Post and other news outlets this morning that the Russian deputy foreign minister was saying that there have been contacts with the Trump campaign, that there were contacts with the Trump campaign prior to the election. That opens up just a whole slew of questions that will have to be answered. I mean, this is not something that presidential campaigns have done in the past. And so, you know, these are all very pressing questions that Donald Trump will have to answer at some point. He is the president-elect of this country. And as President Obama was saying here yesterday, and Hillary Clinton was saying here yesterday, he is going to be our president. And so, you know, this is going to be one of those moments, I think a critical moment in the history of this country, where we really have two paths in front of us. And a lot of people here in Washington are going to have to determine which path we go down. Is it going to be one of a unified, more bipartisan spirit here in Washington? Well, we haven't seen much of that in the last 8 years. Remember, Mitch McConnell said that he wanted to make President Obama a one-term president. Well, there are going to be Democrats in this town who are going to say what's good for the goose is good for the gander and so on. So, you know, this is the atmosphere that Donald Trump is coming into here in Washington, and it's an atmosphere to some extent he created himself. Carol?
It's Wolf here in Washington, Jim. I want to just update our viewers here in the United States and around the world. History is unfolding here in the nation's capital, and we want to welcome those viewers in the United States and around the world as well. Donald Trump, his plane, you see it there, big name Trump right on the side of that jumbo jet. That plane has now landed here in Washington at Reagan National Airport right outside of Washington, Arlington. The president-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, he'll be descending momentarily, getting into that motorcade and heading over to the White House for his first meeting as president-elect with the President of the United States. The President Obama, is beginning this transition process. It's a very quick ride. That motorcade shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to get from Reagan National Airport over to the White House. They will go in to the Oval Office and have that first together on this historic moment. The transition is beginning. The transition from President Obama to the president-elect. He'll be president of the United States on Inauguration Day. That would be on January 20th of 2017. Dana Bash, as we watch all of this history unfold, a lot of people never anticipated this would happen. I don't even know if Donald Trump anticipated this would happen. I suspect the President of the United States, President Obama, was not anticipating a transition to President-elect Donald Trump. But it's happening right now. there's a smooth transition. And so far, Dana, both the president and the president-elect, they've said all the right things about how they want to cooperate and make this work.
Absolutely. And just look at the images that obviously back up what you're talking about. I think
here they come. Here you see
Donald
Donald Trump. Dana, let me interrupt for a moment. You see Donald Trump waving over there. He's walking down those stairs. He'll get into one of those vehicles in the motorcade with Melania Trump and others. And they will head over to the White House. As I said, it shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to drive from Reagan National Airport over to the White House. There will be, Dan, and I just want to remind our viewers, at the end of the meeting in the Oval Office, cameras will be allowed to go in there. We'll hear a statement from the president and presumably the president-elect. I don't know if they'll answer reporters' questions. Reporters will certainly try to ask some questions. I don't know if they'll answer those questions before being whisked out. But this is the historic moment. Go ahead, Dana. Sorry for interrupting.
No, absolutely. It is a historic moment for sure. And actually, what I was just going to say was about the pictures that we're watching, Wolf. I mean, we've all gotten used to seeing the plane with Trump on the side, but seeing it today in the context of the fact that the plane that we're going to presumably, I mean, maybe this is something we have to talk about, it'll be different, but presumably the plane starting January 20th that we're going to see him getting in and out of, will be Air Force One. And so that is, one of the many mind-bending things for a lot of people who are used to having Donald Trump in their living rooms, whether it's at the Apprentice or now, and obviously the past year and a half as a candidate, he will be the leader of the free world. And this meeting today is so historic because it is so steeped in tradition of peaceful transition. And I mean, I remember the first time I was at the White House, I was actually still in school, but I was doing a paper on presidents in the press, and I was invited by our old colleague Ann Compton to witness Bill Clinton coming to the White House on this Thursday for the first time to shake hands with the man. He defeated George H.W. Bush, and it was amazing to see. Now, Donald Trump didn't defeat Barack Obama per se, but he effectively did, since Hillary Clinton was running to embrace his legacy and to be a third term of President Obama. So this is going to be really remarkable. Never mind the very real personal animosity between these two men, because Donald Trump started his foray in politics by being the poster child for President Obama, wasn't really born in this country.
We see Reagan National Airport. The motorcade has now left Reagan National, heading over to the White House. Jim Acosta, do we know if that motorcade is going to go into the South Lawn area, into the North Lawn area? Do we know which entrance they're going to be going into? Oh, the executive, the executive office area. Do we have any clue which way that motorcade will be entering the White House?
Well, Wolf, as you know from being over here at the White House, there are as many cameras up around the grounds here as possible to capture whatever scenario emerges. I don't know which entrance he's coming in here at the White House, Wolf. I remember from when Mitt Romney came here to the White House 4 years ago under very different circumstances. He obviously lost that election. We really didn't catch a glimpse of Mitt Romney going in because he was sort of rushed in and not really in the view of the cameras, and that might be the case here as well. But he is the president-elect. He has a large Secret Service contingent with him, and so he might be a bit more noticeable than Mitt Romney was 4 years ago. I think this is going to be fascinating to watch, Wolf. When Donald Trump goes into the Oval Office, he will be going into the Oval Office as the president-elect of the United States, and he will be meeting with somebody, as Dana was talking about there, who he's clashed with over the years. Each one of these figures thought they had gotten the better of each other over these years, and now Donald Trump, at the moment, appears to be having the last word, as he's going to be the next president of the United States and have an opportunity to dismantle the Obama agenda. Just talking to people here inside the White House, they are sort of focused in on the transition, and this is where the professionalism of people on both sides, in both parties, we sort of see this take shape, and it's a reassuring sign for the country. I was just talking to an official here a few moments ago who was saying, I'm just focused on the transition. I want to make sure this is a transition that is a peaceful transfer of power to the next administration. And when you hear that, it makes you think, you know what, things are going to be all right. And I suspect, and I just talked to an official with the Trump campaign as I was driving into the White House this morning, Wolf, trying to figure out, well, am I going to have a job in the administration and so on. There's just a lot of activity on both sides. And this is what our democracy is all about. One president leaves, another one comes in.
8 years ago, when President Bush, let's go back to 1992, when President George H.W. Bush hosted President-elect Bill Clinton, they spoke for nearly 2 hours. 2 hours at that time when President Bush welcomed President Obama 8 years ago. They spoke for about an hour in the Oval Office, and we'll see how long this meeting lasts today between President-elect Trump and President Obama. On the left part of your screen, you see an entrance to the west wing of the White House from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. There's a little street over there that people can park at. He might walk in that way, or on the right part of your screen, you see the driveway at the west wing of the White House. He may come in there. On the other hand, Jim Acosta, you've been a White House correspondent for a while. They could surprise us and just drive into the south lawn of the White House. I'm sitting here. If you take a look behind me, and you can see behind me, you can see the Washington Monument. You might see that motorcade beginning to come in because it'll be coming from back there from Reagan National Airport, which is right across the Potomac River, and it'll head right into the White House. It's a really spectacular view that we have from this location overlooking the north lawn of the White House. We see that entire historic presence that so many of our viewers here in the United States and around the world are certainly familiar with. But once again, they haven't really given us a whole schedule of events, how this is going to unfold. I remember 8 years ago, there was a great shot, great opportunity when the president and the president-elect, President Bush, President-elect Obama, they walked through the motorcade, through the colonnade on the side of the Rose Garden towards the Oval Office. Are we going to get that this time, you think, Jim? Because
I think so.
Some officials have said what President Obama wants to do is precisely what President Bush did for him. He was so grateful to President Bush for that very warm welcome.
That's right. And remember, George W. Bush, for the duration of President Obama's presidency, he elected not to criticize, not be partisan when it came to talking about President Obama. So he set a precedent that now President Obama could elect to follow as well. And my sense is you're right, Wolf. If you listen to what President Obama said yesterday in the Rose Garden when he urged the country just how, even though this is so difficult and people are so saddened on the Democratic side that they lost, that it is the good American thing to do to give this next president a chance. And, this is coming from a president who was viewed by Donald Trump as not being legitimate and not being born in this country. And so President Obama could have taken a different path and decided, well, I'm just not going to deal with this guy. But what President Obama is doing here is something I think rather extraordinary. He is rolling out the same welcome mat that George W. Bush rolled out for him. And that's what I'm referring to when I talk to officials here at the White House and with the Trump campaign. You do get a sense that people are going to try to be professional about this. People are going to try to be civil about this because not only is the whole country watching, Wolf, the whole world is watching.
The whole world indeed is watching right now. Dana, the words that were exchanged during the campaign between Donald Trump and President Obama were very often ugly on both sides, but that was then, this is now. The words they exchanged today will be so powerful in sending a message to their respective supporters and followers. You know what? There's a new page that's about to begin. Let's forget about what happened in the past. Let's move on right now. There's a much greater responsibility that both of us have to the country, to democracy, as opposed to a political campaign. I suspect we'll hear more of that over the next, not only today, but over the next several days.
No question. But I think in this instance, the words that they say are going to matter, but it is going to be the proverbial cliche picture that tells 1,000, maybe this time, millions and millions of words. Just seeing the two of them, which we expect to do, likely in the Oval Office, the most sort of sacred of American locations, the most recognizable maybe in the world of American power, is going to be so, I think, so strong and so telling. The other thing that I'm looking for, Wolf, is unfortunately something that we'll never know because we can't be that fly in the wall in this meeting. But It's one of the things that President Obama referred to when he talked yesterday about him being heartened not just by the public comments that Donald Trump made, but the private comments he made to him when they spoke by phone. That combined with even people like Mike Pence, Donald Trump's running mate, and many, many others that you and I have talked to for the past many months, who insist, you know what, there's a public Donald Trump and there's a private Donald Trump. And so, the reporting that we can do about what goes on, if we can, because it will be quite intimate, in that private discussion will be fascinating. But the other thing, just to kind of keep this, one Donald Trump versus another Donald Trump idea going, is what I've been hearing over the past 24 or 36 hours from people close to Trump is that there is going to be a campaign Donald Trump and a President Donald Trump. And that he, as surprised as he is, which I'm told he really is, he understands that campaigning and rousing people and performing on the campaign trail is a quite different thing than needing to get the job done and govern. And so this is going to be one of the first tests about whether we see the President Donald Trump that his friends insist is there.
But what you're suggesting, and I think it's accurate, Dana, that a lot of the things he may have said and done while he was running for the Republican presidential nomination, while he was running for President of the United States, he did and said a lot of those things because he thought it would get him a lot of votes. And clearly it did get him a lot of votes. But now that he is the president-elect of the United States, and within a matter of a few weeks he'll be the president of the United States, he'll see it differently, and he may not necessarily govern as he campaigned. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I think certainly part of it, is about the governing and the policy, but I think even less so. We'll see. We'll see how the policy of a President Trump or a Trump administration takes shape. I think part of the reason why this is, many reasons why this is such new terrain is because we don't know, because he doesn't know. He's never done it before. But I think more about the way that he approaches the bully pulpit, which he's going to have. The bully pulpit is quite different from the stump. And my understanding is that he gets that. And that, as this is seeping in for him, and I'm sure being in the Oval Office is going to be, the ultimate eye-opener, that he is going to recognize that the rhetoric that he uses is going to have to be quite different.
Very different. We're looking here. You see on the right-hand side of your screen, you see pictures coming in from the driveway in front of the west wing of the White House, the north side of the White House, the north lawn. There across that little street is the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. It used to be called the Old Executive Office Building. It was once the War Department of the United States government during World War II, but now it's the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. A lot of times visitors to the White House, they'll pull up there and they'll go into that side entrance, which you see on the left side of the screen. On the other hand, sometimes they'll just drive in through the north lawn of the White House. There's a driveway coming in from Pennsylvania Avenue, but we don't know which way they're coming in. The White House hasn't elaborated all the so-called TikTok, the specifics of what is about to unfold. Manu Raju is with us as well. Manu, I just want very quickly to give us a sense. Once Donald Trump leaves the White House, he's heading up to where you are, up on Capitol Hill, for what will also be a very important meeting with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, right?
Yeah, that's right. And remember, Paul Ryan and Donald Trump have not actually seen eye to eye through the course of this campaign season. At one point earlier last month, Paul Ryan saying he would not defend or campaign with Donald Trump. But later in the campaign season, of course, Paul Ryan starting to come around to the idea that Donald Trump could get elected and started to push more aggressively for Donald Trump to win the presidency. Now, today will be the first time for these two to meet face-to-face, eye-to-eye, since a lot of the back and forth happened during the campaign season, and really to align their agendas to see what Republicans in the House could do to push forward what Donald Trump wants to do. I mean, the Republican leadership is coming to this. It's sort of unclear exactly what Donald Trump wants in his first 100 days. Of course, he laid that out in the campaign season, laid out a whole bunch of things he wanted to do in the campaign season, but it's not clear what order they want to do things, exactly what message they want to send. Do they want to try to look like they're working with Democrats? Do they want to go after and things that will please their base, like a repeal of Obamacare? Those are all big questions, and as well as appointments, filling key cabinet positions. And in that regard, that's going to be important for his second discussion of the day. That is meeting with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, because the Senate, of course, has the role of confirming those cabinet appointments, and as well as confirming that last justice on the Supreme Court. So a lot of discussions taking place about strategy, about tactics, and about messaging, and also trying to figure out how to work with someone that these two leaders, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, just are not sure what he would be like as president, Wolf.
Yeah, I just want to point out, and Jim Acosta, you're there at the White House for us. You see some people standing on the stairs over there at the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Maybe they have inside word that the president-elect in his motorcade will be arriving there. If he does, we'll see him walk into the West Wing of the White House on the left part of the screen. If that's the game plan that the White House has in mind, you can see pictures coming in. A nice shot. I think this shot comes in from where I am, across Lafayette Park from the White House. But go ahead. Yeah.
That's right, Wolf. As you know, Wolf, when there are leaves on the trees there, we don't get quite the same shot as we would if this were happening a little bit later on in the year. But yeah, you're right. If there are people positioned there on the steps of the Eisenhower Executive Office building with their cell phones handy, they are preparing, I presume, to see President-elect Trump arrive here at the White House. Is he greeted by the president there? I'm not so sure about that. Might be greeted by officials. And then brought in to see the president in the Oval Office. But fascinating imagery to watch. And just to pick up on the conversation you were having, does President-elect Trump pursue a more bipartisan agenda? We just don't know about that. Wolf, talking to Republican sources, they just don't know what they're going to get come January 20th. And I think one word of caution, we don't want to get too carried away that this is going to be just this big bipartisan moment here in Washington. Donald Trump talked about things that conservatives in this country are expecting him to deliver on. They're expecting him to deliver on a wall on the Mexican border. They're expecting him to deliver on cracking down on Syrian refugees coming into this country and ending the processing of Syrian refugees into this country. They're expecting him to repeal Obamacare. And I talked to a Democratic source on the Hill last night who said that may not be that difficult to do through the budget reconciliation process. They may not need a supermajority in the Senate to do that. And so that actually may be easier to do than perhaps people think. And so if Donald Trump decides to go down this bipartisan road, he might have some people on the right, people like Ted Cruz, who came on board on his campaign at the very end, intensely disappointed. And as John Boehner understood as House Speaker here, that's a difficult caucus to keep happy. And Paul Ryan knows this all too well also. But, these are all storylines that we'll get to after this historic day. Obviously, Wolf, the imagery of being here at the White House, seeing those flags up and down West Executive Drive in between the Eisenhower Executive Office building and the White House West Wing, remind us that this is our country, this is our America, this is our transition of power, and this is just something that we haven't seen before. We've never seen a billionaire businessman walk into the White House here as president-elect. So we're all witnessing history together.
It's almost 11 a.m. here on the East Coast. Donald Trump and his entourage, including Melania Trump, expected momentarily to arrive. We're now being told, Jim Acosta, that the expectation is he will actually drive in on the South Lawn, in the South Lawn entrance to the White House, not where between the old executive or the Eisenhower Executive Office building and the West Wing. The images we're seeing, those people who are standing on the stairs over there may be disappointed that they're not going to see him. They may drive in on that south side, but the South Lawn, and eventually make their way there. But I suspect that at a historic moment like this, the president will want to receive him in a more majestic entrance, which would be that South Lawn entrance. We don't know that for sure, but that's my expectation. Certainly President Obama deeply appreciates, as much as the antagonism that developed, the bitter words that were exchanged during the campaign and over these years, I should say, I think he appreciates totally the historic moment that the country is about to observe, and he wants to make it as smooth and as productive as possible.
That's right, Wolf. And also keep in mind, this White House will want this moment recorded. And Pete Souza, the White House photographer, I'm assuming will be right there taking pictures of it. We'll see those pictures at some point on the White House Instagram account later on today. By the way, it may also be on the Trump Transition Team Twitter account. They've opened up a Trump Transition Team Twitter account that fired up, I think, last night, and we started seeing those tweets come out there. And I think both sides are going to want this image out there, because I think it serves the interests of both parties to see this peaceful transition to occur. And also, Wolf, we should keep in mind that the press will be allowed into the Oval Office. That small pool of press that follows the president goes into the Oval Office when he meets with heads of state and so forth. They'll be in there. And as you mentioned earlier, there should be a few reporters in there as well who will have the opportunity to ask some questions. Now, one thing that I think is just going to be fascinating to watch, Wolf, is that, as I observed out on the campaign trail, and we all know all too well, if Donald Trump is asked a question, it is very difficult for him not to answer that question. And so while the President of the United States, what we saw him with other foreign leaders, might say, okay, thanks, guys, thanks very much, and the press would be whisked out of the Oval Office, he's going to have Donald Trump next to him. And Donald Trump, if he's asked a question that he likes, he may want to answer it. And but you know, I think at this moment, from what we've seen so far in the last 48 hours since election night, I think Donald Trump, if given the chance to speak in the Oval Office, and perhaps he will also want to once again send a more unifying message and set a more unifying tone.
I suspect both of these men, the President of the United States and the President-elect of the United States, have been thinking long and hard about what they're going to say to those cameras in the Oval Office of the White House. I suspect we're going to hear that. I'm hearing sirens behind me here. I'm just across the street from the White House myself, so I suspect that motorcade is getting closer and closer. We hear those sirens coming in right now. It's 11 a.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. I'm Wolf Blitzer. We're reporting history unfolding here in the nation's capital. We once again want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. Momentarily, the President-elect Donald Trump will be arriving here at the White House to go into the Oval Office and meet for the first time as President-elect with the President of the United States, Barack Obama. They will meet in the Oval Office. It might last an hour, could last 2 hours based on historic precedent. They will have an opportunity to discuss all of the history that is unfolding right now. And the President Obama, clearly wants to do as much as he can to make this a smooth transition. We know from President Obama he was very grateful to President Bush 8 years ago when President Bush warmly welcomed him into the White House and provided him with a lot of the background he needed during this transition period between now and January 20th, when President-elect Trump eventually on January 20th will be sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. Dana, once again, it's a little frustrating to the journalists that the White House apparently has not allowed cameras to capture live images of Donald Trump arriving at the White House. We will have images. We will have cameras inside the Oval Office at the end of their meeting when they will both speak out, and we will see that. But it's always frustrating to me as a former White House correspondent that sometimes the White House, they'll have their own cameras, they'll have their official White House photographer there, but they're not letting apparently not letting even a small pool of network television cameras and print reporters over to get an eyewitness account to this historic moment. But maybe they'll surprise us and allow us to do that. But go ahead, Dana. I'm anxious to get your thoughts on this historic moment. We're looking at live pictures, by the way, of the West Wing of the White House, the North Lawn entrance to the West Wing. I don't know if he's going to be driving in there. We haven't really been told by the White House. Go ahead, Dana.
That's right. First of all, I agree with you. I've been covering politics, and I covered the White House at Capitol Hill for so long, and still, even traveling the world with George W. Bush, covering many, many summits, many majestic things. One of the images that I just have in my mind, and I will for the rest of my life, was being able to be on the South Lawn. Again, I was still in school. I should tell you that Donald Trump has arrived, we are told, has arrived at the White House. The fact that we are told, and we have to tell you, and we haven't been able to show you the image, speaks to what Wolf was just saying, that apparently we don't have the live pictures. But what I was saying was that there were live pictures of the historic moment back in 1992, which is the moment I remember when Bill Clinton, who had just defeated George H.W. Bush, arrived on the South Lawn of the White House, walked back towards the Oval Office. People who have seen press conferences and events, even yesterday with President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, they walk out to the Rose Garden. That was the image that, you can even Google it now, that was there for history, that the press was able to get. Clearly, we're not going to see that. If we do, maybe, fingers crossed, we can see it later. But much more importantly is the moment that's going to happen in the Oval Office. The Oval Office.
I just want to interrupt for a moment, Dana. I just want to interrupt for a moment. We are now told that Donald Trump, the president-elect of the United States, has arrived at the White House. He didn't go into the West Wing, the North Lawn entrance that we see there. Didn't come in through the executive drive area between the West Wing and the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. He did arrive on the South Lawn of the White House, which is a much more majestic entrance. We didn't see the live pictures of that, but we are now told that President-elect Trump is there. He's inside the White House. He has arrived, and presumably President Obama will escort him, invite him into the Oval Office, at which point they can spend an hour or longer and talk about this process. John King, a former White House correspondent just like me, is here with me. We're across the street from the White House, a majestic view we have. John, I'm anxious for your thoughts, because so many people never thought we would see a day that President Obama would welcome President-elect Trump to the Oval Office.
And so you can look in the rearview mirror, Wolf, and talk about the animosity between these two men. Donald Trump was a cheerleader for the birther movement. President Obama was harshly critical, saying Donald Trump was unstable, erratic, not prepared to be president. But I think today we should spend most of our time looking in the windshield, not in the rearview mirror, excuse me, on this remarkable moment. And having covered the White House, we all have bad days in life, but when you cover the White House, you walk down that driveway every day, and what a gift and an honor it is to work in that building. Well, Donald Trump today, I think the awesome responsibility he's about to inherit, if it hasn't sunk in already, it will when you walk into the Oval Office, the shrine of American democracy. When the president takes him out into the Rose Garden, they walk along the colonnade over to the White House residence. This is a changing of the guard in the United States. The entire world is watching this. A divided nation is watching this. And as President Obama, I think, struck the perfect tone yesterday, paying respects to George W. Bush. And I think what we see and what we don't see today is a remarkable moment in American history. And however you voted in this election, a celebration of the continuity of power, the transfer of power, and the strength of the republic.
You and I, John, we covered that transition back in November, December 1992, when President George H.W. Bush welcomed the president-elect, the Arkansas governor, Bill Clinton, to the White House. We remember how smooth that transition went. We remember 8 years ago how smooth the transition from President George W. Bush to President Obama went. And I suspect this transition will be smooth as well.
This is the beginning of an incredibly important 10-week period of time. Yes, President Obama still has some business he wants to get done. Yes, President Obama will probably have a few private words with Donald Trump about, I know you promised to change everything I've done, maybe you want to keep this or that. But mostly this is about how this works, pledging cooperation, making sure the teams are in sync with each other. And it sounds like little stuff, but Donald Trump is about to start getting the most sensitive intelligence briefings. He's about to learn a lot about ISIS, a lot about what's going on in the Middle East, a lot about the China relationship. And as he learns that during the transition, he'll probably want to reach out and talk to people who are in government at the moment. So some of this is the simple stuff, if you will, exchange of contacts. Some of it is just a preparation of how the president runs his day, and Donald Trump will have his own way of doing it. Every president is different. This is the beginning of a process. The end of a process is a fascinating tradition. The president leaving always leaves a note for the president, the incoming president. And that note, I remember you mentioned Bill Clinton.
That's usually on January 20th, the last time the president is in the Oval Office. Right. Those notes are very, very historic and significant.
Right. And so that's 10 weeks from now. And I remember George H.W. Bush left a note to Bill Clinton saying, I know you promised in your campaign to focus like a laser on the economy. Good luck. God bless. I just want to tell you that every problem in the world will come across your desk. Be prepared for the unexpected. And then George W. Bush came promising a humble administration to focus on the hemisphere, and 9/11 happened. I'm sure one of the things President Obama will tell President Trump is, for all you have planned for this job, it's the unpredictable, the unexpected that will dominate your days.
Let's not forget that transition in 2000 from President Clinton to President George W. Bush. That was also an extremely historic and smooth transition as well. You were there.
There were some bumps in that transition. Remember, there was some childish behavior, some people saying they took the W's off the keyboards and the computers, and that was the lesson.
That wasn't President Clinton, though. There's some of his junior aides.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it was President Clinton. The principles. And again, given the personal animosity between President Obama and Donald Trump, and you cannot forget that, and you cannot wipe that away on this day. But the professionalism of the president, and again, I think the example of George W. Bush to President Obama is the example he's going to follow as he hands over to Donald Trump, understanding the moment we're in. There's still many problems in the world. Again, the financial markets started to jump around a little bit right after the election. They seem to have settled in right now. How this is handled, these are two men with very different agendas, two men with very different views, two men with a personal history. But how this is handled president to president-elect will say a lot about the early days of the Trump administration, and B, this is the last 70 days of the Obama presidency.
Yes, Jim Acosta, you're there at the White House for us. We're now told President-elect Trump is in the White House. He has arrived. He is there, and he's getting ready. They're getting ready to go into the Oval Office with the President of the United States and start this meeting. As I was pointing out, it's a little frustrating we didn't have live cameras to record that historic moment, but this White House has been a little bit less open to those tight pools, as we used to call them, to allow the news media to capture those historic moments. I hope it changes, but go ahead.
Yeah. That's true. After what we experienced over this last campaign, it bears reminding that, yes, there were some clashes from time to time between the White House under President Obama and the White House press corps over access and those sorts of issues. They may pale in comparison in terms of what's to come. But, Wolf, we should point out there's a little bit of news involving the President-elect Donald Trump. He did have a call earlier this morning with the Prime Minister of Britain, Theresa May, and she spoke to Donald Trump, according to this readout from the British government, congratulating him on his victory. And according to this readout from the British government, Donald Trump invited the Prime Minister here to the White House, to Washington, as soon as possible. That, too, is a sign of this peaceful transfer of power, that the president-elect is on the phone with foreign leaders, reestablishing those ties with important heads of state around the world. That, yes, when President-elect Trump comes into the Oval Office, there will be a continuity in terms of United States foreign policy, in terms of dealing with our closest allies. Now, of course, there are going to be some questions about how Donald Trump deals with Russia and whether or not he sort of reshuffles the deck in terms of his dealings with other foreign leaders. But that is, I think, a very interesting development that we're seeing this morning on the very same morning that he's meeting with the President of the United States.
Very interesting. I'm sure he's going to be taking a lot of phone calls from world leaders. The British Prime Minister, Theresa May, calling, having this conversation. I'm sure he's going to be taking phone calls from other prime ministers and presidents, friendly countries, maybe some not so friendly countries as well during these weeks of this transition that is historic as well. Doug Brinkley, the presidential historian, is joining us right now. Doug, it's always fascinating. This is sort of history unfolding on a minute-by-minute basis. But step back a little bit and give us your perspective on what we're about to see when the president-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, is seen in the Oval Office with President Obama.
Well, this can't be an easy moment for President Obama. I mean, he's shattered like a lot of Democrats are. He really thought Hillary Clinton was going to be his successor. The fact that Donald Trump won is a blow to his legacy, particularly the Affordable Care Act, in which Donald Trump is claiming on day one he's going to try to repeal Obama's singularly most important domestic achievement. But historians look at these moments and we focus on them a lot. This really is a big moment we're watching here, the healing factor going on. Some transitions are easy, some are tough. I mean, I remember Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter had zero chemistry, couldn't stand each other. Carter wanted nothing to do really with Reagan. He just lost Carter in 1980, a landslide election. He knew a lot of his programs were going to be dismantled. In fact, Reagan immediately took the solar panels off of the White House that Jimmy Carter had put on to make a big point, that there's a new management in town. But Barack Obama is a pro. As the saying goes, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. And this is Obama, what he's good at. He's going to try to be a healer for our country and be instructive to Donald Trump and make sure that the institution of the presidency continues unabated with as least amount of drama coming out of today as possible.
There have been some comparisons made. I wonder if you think they're fair. The transition from Jimmy Carter in 1980 to Ronald Reagan in 1980. Jimmy Carter was the incumbent president, deeply frustrated that he wasn't reelected. Ronald Reagan, a two-term governor of California, was elected. A movie star, a cowboy, if you will. Officials in the Carter White House were belittling him. And you say that transition was tough the weeks between the election in November and the inauguration on January 20th. Was it a tough transition like that? Or did they manage, for the good of the country, to make it as smooth as possible?
They managed, but barely. I mean, Carter didn't want to even talk to Reagan on the time of the inaugural when famously the Iran hostages got released. The problem was when they met, Jimmy Carter had a whole list, Wolf, of all these things that he was going to have to do, like micro list. And Reagan kind of half listened and said, "Well, I'm not going to be able to do all that. I'm going to need my sleeping hours. I'm only going to work an 8-hour, 9-hour day." And Carter was aghast that Reagan, in his mind, didn't seem to grasp how urgent so many of these thorny problems were. At the heart of it, though, was 1980 was a revolution. The right came in, the progressive movement of Lyndon Johnson, it got shattered, and it was a revolutionary moment. And we're in another revolutionary moment here where Barack Obama has to worry that not only is Donald Trump coming in, his arch enemy, but that a lot of what he's accomplished these last 8 years might be unraveled in a Trump presidency.
The president-elect of the United States is now here in Washington. He's over at the White House right now. He arrived on the south lawn of the White House. We didn't get any pictures. There were no live cameras allowed there. We will see President-elect Trump and President Obama in the Oval Office. We're standing by for that. That meeting is an historic meeting. The First Lady is also welcoming the incoming First Lady of the United States to the White House. That's also an important historic moment. Kate Anderson Brower, who wrote an important book on First Ladies, First Woman, the grace and power of America's modern First Ladies, is with us here. This is an historic moment. Give us a little sense, Kate, what is likely to happen when the incoming First Lady is received by the First Lady?
Well, like Doug says, I mean, the animosity transfers over to the first ladies, too, right? The Bush, the Reagan-Carter handover was difficult for Rosalind Carter and for Nancy Reagan. They barely spoke to each other in the limo on the way to the swearing-in ceremony on Capitol Hill. I suspect that Mrs. Obama will take Melania to the West Sitting Hall, have a coffee while the president and the president-elect meet in the Oval Office. And this isn't the formal Passover where they do a residence tour, where the interior decorators with them. They get down to nitty-gritty details, even what kind of deodorant the new first family wants to use and what rooms they can change. They're binders of information. The Trumps can't come in and change, for instance, the yellow oval room in the residence or the Queen's bedroom or the Lincoln bedroom without getting permission from the curator's staff. So there are checks and balances, but I think the animosity cannot be overstated here. You know, Betty Ford said when the Carters came in, whoever is replacing you didn't deserve to be here, because these women traditionally work very hard to get their husbands elected. One-term presidents take it very hard, and the first ladies do too. Melania was much less present on the campaign trail, though, than we've seen in the past from other first ladies.
So Melania Trump will get a tour from Michelle Obama, the First Lady. The First Lady will take her upstairs to the residence, show her show her the Lincoln bedroom, other historic sites there, not just the East Room or the big dining room. That they'll have an opportunity to see where the family is actually going to live.
Exactly. And like John said, instead of having an actual letter that presidents leave behind for each other, this is the handover of power between the first ladies, is the tour. And on this tour, which I don't think is happening today, that will happen in the future. I think this is more symbolic today. The first lady stands the incoming first lady at a certain window in the dressing room and says, if you look in this spot, you'll be able to see your husband at work in the Oval Office. And this is what Barbara Bush did for Hillary Clinton, what Hillary Clinton did for Laura Bush. Regardless of political party, there is a respect for the position of First Lady and a sorority of First Ladies. But this is obviously more difficult than a lot of past transitions.
So what you're saying is, Kate, there's a real protocol for what's going to happen today between the incoming and the outgoing First Ladies?
Absolutely. And there's respect for this position. I think that these are the only women in the world who know what it's like to live in the White House, to have these expectations. First ladies are very controversial usually. You know, they have to pick an apolitical issue that doesn't offend anyone. We saw Melania Trump talk about cyberbullying and immediately get pilloried in the press because of what her husband does on Twitter. It's hard to fit in this role. Melania has never been married to an elected politician before, so I think she'll find it especially difficult.
What about, do they have a conversation that would be normal? I assume it would be normal for Melania Trump. They have a young son, Barron. Yeah. And when Michelle Obama came to the White House, 2 young daughters, they had to find a school for the daughters. They had to talk a little bit. We know that Melania Trump and Donald Trump, for that matter, they want to protect their young son, Barron. They're going to. I assume they'll take him out of a school in New York, bring him to Washington, and find a nice school for him to go to. Just as the Obama girls grew up here over these past 8 years and went to school here.
It's interesting because Sasha, goes to Sidwell Friends, and the Obamas are staying here so she can finish school at Sidwell. There's a chance that Barron could go to Sidwell too. There could be some overlap there.
That's where Chelsea Clinton went too.
Exactly, and that's what Hillary Clinton did with Jackie Kennedy. She asked for advice, but having a young son, Barron's 10 years old. We haven't had a son in the White House since John Kennedy Jr. It's been all daughters: Chelsea, Jenna, Barbara. This is Amy Carter. So this is historic and important because of that too, to have this young son. And I think, like Hillary did with Jackie, Melania would be wise to reach back and talk to Michelle Obama and other first ladies about what it's like raising children.
All right, I want you to stay with us. Can you stay with us, Kate? All right, and John, you're going to stay with us as well? You have no choice.
What Wolf tells me to do. I learned that the first day I came to see
We have a lot more coming up. We're only moments away. We'll see the President of the United States and the President-elect of the United States in the Oval Office, first time together since Donald Trump won the presidency. We'll take a quick break. Our special coverage continues right after this. Once again, we want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. History unfolding here in Washington, D.C. You're taking a look at live pictures coming in from the White House. The President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, is now in the White House. He is being received by the President of the United States, Barack Obama. They're having a meeting in the Oval Office. First time they're getting together since President-elect Trump was elected President of the United States. The historic moment, indeed. At the end of that meeting, camera crews and reporters, photographers will be allowed into the Oval Office for what's called a photo opportunity. We'll hear statements from the President and the President-elect. Reporters will then try to get a few questions in. We'll see if they answer reporters' questions. Later, the President-elect will head up to Capitol Hill for a very important meeting with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. Sean Spicer is joining us right now. He's the chief spokesman strategist for the Republican National Committee. He's been very much involved in trying to get Donald Trump elected president. First of all, Sean, I know you worked really hard to get him elected in your role as the Republican National Committee strategist. Congratulations. What do you anticipate will happen today?
Well, first, I appreciate it. Thank you, Wolf. Most of the credit goes to my boss, RNC Reince Priebus, whose vision and investment over the last 4 years really helped take the movement and the message that this candidate brought and helped the entire ticket win up and down, put together one of the most amazing ground games and data operations that any party's ever seen. And I know we talked to a lot of people over the last few weeks about how we're going to translate the movement and the message that Trump brought onto the ground, and how we've been working hand in hand with the campaign to go door to door. And I think Chairman Priebus's vision and message combined with an amazing message and movement that Donald Trump and campaign had really showed how impressive it was on Tuesday night. As for today, I think, look, I was there on the last day of the Bush White House. President and Mrs. Bush could not have been more classy and gracious, and I think President Obama and Mrs. Obama have noted that, and I think they will follow that example that President Bush and Mrs. Bush used to ensure that there is a peaceful transfer of power and that the same accommodations and hospitality that they were shown by the Bush team will be shown to the Trump team to ensure that our country continues to show how beautifully we transfer power after one election.
I suspect you're right. You mentioned Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, your boss. A lot of speculation that he's become close to Donald Trump over these past several months. A lot of speculation he could emerge as the White House chief of staff. I assume you've heard that speculation. So 2 questions. Is he going to be chief of staff? And what about you? What role do you want in a Trump administration?
All I'm looking forward to is a good seat at the inauguration right now. I'm looking forward to watching Donald Trump and Mike Pence get sworn in as the next president and vice president of the United States. And I'm honored to have played a small part in that. I know Chairman Priebus and the rest of the team here at the RNC, Chris Carr, our political director, Bill Skelly and Liam O'Rourke on the data side, Garrett Lansing, who runs our digital, Katie Walsh, our chief of staff, have all just been working tirelessly to help this campaign. And I think all of us, frankly, just spent the last 36 hours excited and happy, and you know, we'll see where it goes from there. I know that everyone wants to make sure that we help Donald Trump and his team be successful, and but it's too early for any of those questions to be asked right now.
I suspect that's a very diplomatic answer. Maybe State Department, maybe a role as the State Department, some senior position there. You know, Sean, we got John King with us. He's got a lot of experience covering the White House over these years. He's got a question for you.
Sean, let me echo the congratulations from Wolf, and I hope there's a well-deserved beach in your future before that great seat at the inauguration. You're a very smart person when it comes to messaging and strategy, and I'm just wondering if Donald Trump, the tone Donald Trump sets early on. You remember the early days of the Obama administration. I'm not trying to assign blame to which side, but the Republicans said, you know, he came out with this Democratic partisan agenda, and then immediately you had the divide between the two. If Donald Trump asked you, during the campaign, I said I would appoint a special prosecutor. During the campaign, my crowds chanted repeatedly, lock her up, lock her up. Should I do that, or should I turn the page and say it's time to let Hillary Clinton go into retirement peacefully? Let's drop all that talk. If Donald Trump asked you that question, how would you answer?
Well, I'd say the tone and sentiment that he expressed on, well, actually Wednesday morning when he took the stage officially, is the tone that I think we should carry through, which is he talked about a lot of policies, helping people from around this country understand how policies can help them enact policies and solutions that will lift up all Americans. And I think that would be where the focus should be. I think that's when you think of the multiple ambitious pieces of his agenda to help America. I think that's where we start, and again, I think that's where you're going to see him go, because he understands that so many people from around this country are hurting, and that they really, really believe in the message and the movement that he and Governor Pence have taken from one corner of this country to the next, to the inner cities, to the rural parts of this country, north, south, east, and west. There's so many people that have looked to Donald Trump and Mike Pence to bring that change to Washington that I think that's where we're going to probably spend the most. He'll spend the most amount of his time.
You're showing your skills here and avoiding the very specific part of the question. On the question of special prosecutor, you know what's happening in the country. Donald Trump won fair and square. Donald Trump will be the president-elect. But we live in a divided America, and there are a lot of people who are a bit anxious about this. On that specific question, if he said, should I name a special prosecutor, as I said in the campaign, would you say, sir, go ahead, you promised that, or sir, maybe you should just leave that in the campaign and have a different tone as president?
I'll tell you, I think he laid out a lot of things, solutions and policies and priorities. The counsel that I would give him is to focus on a lot of those things that are going to unite us as a country, make the country better, lift people out of poverty, create more jobs, reform health care. He's got a lot of things on that agenda. And then beyond that, I would keep my advice to him very private.
Do you think he's going to, on day one, January 20th of 2017, only a few weeks from now, Sean, that he's going to start on day one and issue a series of executive orders eliminating a lot of the decisions, the executive actions that President Obama took, whether on immigration, climate change, sensitive issues like that?
I think he's got about 2.5 months until that day in January where he raises his hand and puts his other hand on the Bible and gets sworn in as president to lay out that agenda and figure out what exactly needs to come first, second, or third. But I'm going to tell you now that there's no question that starting day one, he is going to make it very clear that this is going to be an administration that is not going to stand for the status quo and is going to change the way that this government operates to make people's lives better. But you're going to notice it on day one. So I don't want to lay out, and I'm not going to prejudge how he wants to do it or exactly the way in which he wants to do it. But I know this. On day one, you're going to feel a positive impact for this country because Mike Pence and Donald Trump have become the president and the vice president of this country.
I know you had a very, very busy role in the campaign, and you were up in New York over at Trump Tower trying to help get him elected. Do you have a specific role? I know you work at the RNC during this transition that you're going to be working on, helping Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, who is in charge of the transition. Do you have a specific role right now, Sean?
No, I don't. I'll do what I'm asked. Look, I'm honored to I'm honored to have been part of it, Wolf. But there's a lot of great people in Trump Tower that have really worked hard and across the country, frankly, putting up signs and advising and creating policy. And so I think all of them want to be part of this historic opportunity. And wherever he or his team asks, I know people want to help.
One final question before I let you go, Sean. Were you stunned that he won?
I was a bit shocked by the depth and breadth of it. When you saw some of these counties come in, that Obama had won 52-47, 51-48, some of the Wisconsin counties, the Michigan counties, places where we knew we were going to do well, and we had seen the surge, but we sort of, in a couple of the areas, frankly, you watched these counties flip. And it really spoke to the depth and breadth of the change and movement that he was spearheading.
Sean Spicer, the chief strategist, the spokesman for the Republican National Committee. Sean, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf. Thank you, John.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. Remember, we're waiting to go into the Oval Office at the White House, right behind behind where we are right now. The president and the president-elect, they are meeting right now. Toward the end of their meeting, they will invite camera crews, reporters in. They'll make statements. The president and the president-elect will get live coverage of that, and we'll share it with you, of course, much more of our special coverage on this historic day in Washington right after this. Welcome back to our special coverage. Take a look at the live picture coming in from the White House right now. Inside the White House, inside the Oval Office, the President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, is being received by the President of the United States, Barack Obama. Their first meeting during this transition process. Presumably there will be more down the road leading up to January 20th of next year, only a few weeks from now, when Donald Trump will be inaugurated, sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. Our camera crews are getting ready to go into the Oval Office. Reporters will be going in there as well. President Obama will make a statement. President-elect Donald Trump will make a statement. We'll see if they answer reporters' questions. We'll, of course, have coverage of all of that. The incoming First Lady, Melania Trump, is also being received right now by Michelle Obama, the First Lady of the United States. Presumably, we'll see both of them at some point as well. In the meantime, as we await the statements from the President and the President-elect, our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr, is joining us. Barbara, yesterday, Ash Carter, the Defense Secretary, said he wants everyone at the Pentagon, military and civilian personnel, to work together with the incoming Trump team to make sure there is a smooth transition. What are you hearing?
Well, Wolf, there's, as you would expect, a lot of chatter up and down the Pentagon hallways. I'd say the top curiosity here is who will be the new Secretary of Defense. A lot of names being thrown around, but nobody's hearing anything very definitive yet. One of the big underlying questions so many senior people in the U.S. military have, quite remarkably, is, who is this new commander-in-chief that they will have? They have seen Donald Trump's statements on the campaign trail, talking about waterboarding, talking about bombing with little regard to civilian casualties, talking about taking the oil in Iraq. All of these things potentially very serious violations of international law, violations of the Geneva Convention. Quite remarkably, they want to know, is that the Donald Trump that is the new commander-in-chief, or will he ratchet back once he takes office? Nobody wants to contemplate having to deal with illegal orders from any president of the United States. So that's a big question. But now, President-elect Trump really beginning to understand what is coming at him, because the intelligence community very much preparing to give him a very comprehensive set of briefings, not just the daily intelligence briefing about what is going on in the world, but the so-called crown jewels. How does the military, how does the CIA, how does the U.S. government spy and collect information around the world to keep this country safe? That may be a very sobering prospect for any president-elect. Wolf?
And let's not forget, during the campaign, Donald Trump said that when it comes to fighting ISIS, he knows more than the generals do. I assume that did not go over all that well where you are, Barbara, at the Pentagon.
Yeah, no, some people, I suspect, see it as campaign rhetoric, but, deep inside, who are the generals in the U.S. military today? Most of these people have served multiple combat tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, around the world. They've been away from their families for years. They have buried their troops at Arlington Cemetery. So these people feel these things very heartfelt. They feel that they are giving the president, any president of the United States, their best military advice. It just really has to be said. This is a military totally loyal to any commander-in-chief. Of course, there is civilian control of the military in this country, but very much the generals will be waiting to see everything they can, learn everything they can about Donald Trump. Wolf.
All right, Barbara at the Pentagon, Barbara Starr reporting. Kim Dozier is our global affairs analyst. There's a lot of jobs, hundreds of jobs that will have to be filled by the incoming president. When it comes to national security, the National Security Council, elsewhere at the State Department, the Pentagon, what are you hearing, Kim? Because a lot of speculation, a lot of names out there.
Wolf, I'm hearing that they are scrambling to gather the resumes they need to fill up to thousands of positions that require a top secret security clearance. Now, initially, about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, they had a few hundred names for people who would take top posts like the Secretary of Defense. But when they looked at their internal polling and started realizing that they might win, they started reaching out further. And within the hours since Donald Trump has been named president-elect, I'm hearing that even since the publication of a story I wrote about this transition process, they're getting flooded with resumes, but from a different group of people than are normally applying for these kind of jobs. A lot of people from the military contractor world, retired military types who have a top secret clearance and have been frustrated by what they perceive as the Obama administration's sort of weak or lackluster campaign against Islamic militancy and extremism. So you really could have a change from the previous administration or Washington as we know it, because you might have a surge of people in these jobs who haven't done them before.
Kimberly, stand by. We're going to get back to you as well. John King is here with me. John, I just want to point out the Marine Guard who's standing outside that door at the West Wing of the White House. Tell our viewers the history there.
If the Marine is outside the West Wing, that means the president is in the West Wing. It's one of the ways when you cover the White House, you know if the president's quote-unquote on the job. The president works 24/7. I don't mean that disrespectfully. But if the Marine is there, you know the president has come over from the residence and is actually in the West Wing. So the president is in the West Wing. And this is the back door of the White House, if you will. This is the door, this is the part of the White House Americans see every day if you watch the White House. But the south portico where Donald Trump came in, that's the entrance to the White House, looking out at the mall, looking out at the majestic Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial. If you think of your home, you know, a lot of people come in the back door, right? You park the car in the garage, or you come up the driveway, you go in the back or the side. That's the back door of the White House, but it's the working side of the White House, if you will. That's where the West Wing is. You walk in that wing there, there's the reception desk, and you take a few steps, and you're in the president's office. You're where the chief of staff is. And that's what Donald Trump's learning today. What is business going to be like? He has an office in the Trump Tower. His staff is around him. Well, he's about to be the leader of the free world, and that will be his office. And then, as we talked earlier, people remember where the president was yesterday, in the Rose Garden. the place where the president often uses the bully pulpit. How Donald Trump handles communicating with the American people in the world, I think, is one of the great fascinating questions we have after this campaign, in which he was so provocative, in which he said those things Barbara Starr was just talking about that alarmed the Pentagon. Let's see what a President Trump and how he's different from candidate Trump. But we do know he's a very effective communicator. He likes to use the media and his own statements to communicate. That's how he'll do a lot of that out in the Rose Garden, especially on beautiful days like this in the nation's capital. I think the majesty of the White House is going to be introduced to Donald Trump today. And no matter how successful you are, no matter your track record, when you walk into the Oval Office, you walk out into the Rose Garden, you walk that colonnade over to the residence, which will be Donald Trump's home. It's in both a museum, as Kate was saying earlier. It's both an office and a museum, all at once. And it is a majestic place. We worked there together for years. And like I said, even when you come in a grumpy mood, even when traffic was horrible, even when your coffee doesn't taste right, you walk into that building, and I'm in the White House. It's just a majestic, wonderful, amazing place, and I think both of these leaders, we're going to hear from them in a few minutes. Right. I'm sure they're having a substantive conversation about how the job works, but also just a historic conversation about this is America.
In the 7 years that when I was CNN's senior White House correspondent, you're absolutely right. You go through that gate on the north side of the White House, and you walk down that driveway, and you sort of, and I did it all the time, I was pinching myself. Here I am, a kid from Buffalo, New York. You're a kid from Boston. And we're covering the White House, and I'm sure Donald Trump, as much as he's a billionaire and he knows so much about world affairs, he's pinching himself right now that he's sitting in the Oval Office with the President of the United States.
And you're reminded, this is a very less perspective. We're correspondents. We're covering the White House. He's going to be President of the United States. But you come to work many days thinking today's story is going to be Social Security form, or the President setting up his budget, or this. And then you're literally, I remember days walking down the driveway to do a live shot on some issue and getting a frantic phone call, North Korea just launched a missile, or some world leader has done this, or the financial markets are crashing. The unpredictability of the awesome responsibility Donald Trump is about to assume, I assume that is the biggest message President Obama will convene today, because that is the message I know George H.W. Bush gave to Bill Clinton, that Bill Clinton gave when he handed off to George W. Bush. And it's Democrat to Republican, Republican to Democrat. Yes, there are partisan differences, but there's you are the keeper of that amazing building, and that building represents the job and responsibility you have to the nation and to the world.
A few days ago, the president was ridiculing Donald Trump on the campaign trail, saying, you know what, his aides took away his access to Twitter, and now he wants to have access to the nuclear codes. We're going to hear a very different genre from both of these men coming up in a few minutes.
Absolutely, and that's important. And look, I remember covering the Bush to Obama transition. The Clinton to Bush transition was a little bit more messy, not between the two leaders, but I think between the staffs. It was very different for George W. Bush to come into the White House because he grew up in the White House. I mean, his dad was in the White House. He was around the White House for years, the 8 years of the Reagan presidency and then the 4 years of the George H.W. Bush presidency. So that was a very different transition in terms of familiarity with how it works. Bill Clinton had been a governor. Ronald Reagan had been a governor. Donald Trump is the first president in American history who has not served in the military or in any government position. That's just a fact. And so he has a lot to learn. That's not a criticism. He has a lot to bring. He has an outsider's perspective. He has his business experience. But he does have a lot to learn about the nuts and bolts of government, the levers of government. And I think one of the things he's going to learn quickly is that during the campaign he would say things and he might dominate the news cycle for 24 hours. A president can move financial markets. A president can change geopolitics around the world with a sentence. And that's the first part of learning to be comfortable in the job and how you want to conduct yourself in the job.
Our chief political analyst, Gloria Borger, is with us as well. Gloria, you've covered a lot of these transitions over the years as well. This is an historic moment. I'm anxious to get your thoughts because the President of the United States and the President-elect, they're going to be speaking not only to the American people, but to the world in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm interested in how long their conversation continues, because that'll give us an indication of whether they're having a real kind of substantive conversation or whether Barack Obama is being polite, showing him around the place, letting him in on what his schedule might be like every day. One thing that strikes me that John was talking about, Donald Trump is kind of used to living above the store. Yeah, he's got his offices in Trump Tower. He lives in Trump Tower. So he's used to not having a real commute to work. And I think that part of this won't be odd for him, because that is the situation the President of the United States is in. I think what will be different for Donald Trump. And I don't know if he's ever been to the White House before. Maybe you guys know. I'm not quite sure whether he's done the tour or has been invited as a social guest to a state dinner. I really don't know. But what struck me in visiting Trump, the offices of Donald Trump, is that it's pretty informal. That he is always in his suit and tie. But the offices are kind of, some folks' offices are a mess, and there's not the formality of the White House. I mean, nowhere has the formality of the White House, and I think that will strike Donald Trump. He likes to kind of shout out at his assistants, "Get me this, get me that." That's not the way it works in the Oval Office. At least we don't think so. And so the thing that all of us are struck by as we walk into the White House is the sort of way it's kind of hushed, and the way how formal it is, and the military there that you're seeing there outside, and it's not so much the grandeur of the place as it really is the nature of the fact that people are there to protect this person as he goes through his day-to-day job, and everything he does is important. It's not like he goes downstairs and into one of his restaurants and has lunch. This is a completely different environment, which is why those of us who have worked there and covered the White House, like you guys or me, who've been a visitor there many times to talk to sources, I'm just always struck by the solemnity of the place and the seriousness of purpose inside the White House every single day. So I'm very curious about this meeting and how Donald Trump will be coming out of it. He is who he is, and as he told us on the campaign trail, he's not going to change. The question is, how does the White House adapt to Donald Trump, and vice versa?
Good point, Dana. Gloria, I should say. Good point, Gloria. Stay with us. We have a lot more coming up. We're going to continue our special coverage. We're awaiting the first images of Donald Trump and President Obama, the president-elect of the United States, and the president of the United States. They are now in the Oval Office. You see that Marine Guard outside the West Wing. The president is in the West Wing. Whenever you see that Marine Guard there, you know the president is somewhere in the West Wing. We now know he is in the Oval Office with the president-elect of the United States. They're getting ready to meet with reporters. Camera crews will come in momentarily. We'll get the first statements, the first images from the president-elect and the president. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're told we're only a few moments away from the first images of the president-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, being received in the Oval Office by the president of the United States, Barack Obama. They've been meeting now, I think, since the top of the hour, almost an hour since Donald Trump and his entourage arrived at the White House. Melania Trump, the incoming First Lady, is meeting with Michelle Obama, the First Lady of the United States, at the same time. We're going to be watching all of this very closely, and we'll of course have complete coverage of the statements that the president and the president-elect will be making shortly. So stay with us for that. Dana Bash is with us. Dana, we're going to be studying every little nuance that comes out of this, the body language, the statements, the words, if you will. It's going to be fascinating, not only for those of us who are journalists, but for people out there around the country, indeed around the world. How are these two men going to get together, and how will they behave?
Absolutely. Not only would you and I want to have be a fly on the wall, we almost would want to be kind of inside their brains, thinking what their inside voices are saying versus what their outside voices are saying to one another. But you and I were talking about sort of the access issue and the ability for the press there to capture history, and it was unfortunate that we didn't get that kind of iconic picture of President-elect Donald Trump coming into the South Lawn like we saw Bill Clinton in 1992 and being greeted in the Rose Garden by the president. But I am reminded by a White House aide that there was no photo op of the president-elect Barack Obama with then President George W. Bush in the Oval Office, which will happen today. They're meeting now. We understand that the White House pool has gone at least towards the Oval. Unclear if they're actually in the Oval, but we will get that picture today. And to your point, that image, not only will we be studying it, but I think the fact that they decided to do this in the Oval Office for people to see the two of them together, but to see Donald Trump actually sitting in the place where he will make some of the most important, consequential decisions of his life, and more importantly, the life of 300+ million Americans over and over again, is quite important to the modern story of a peaceful transition.
Donald Trump is going to be the commander-in-chief, and he will have control over the millions of young men and women, potentially active duty reservists who are serving in the United States military. And I'm sure the president is underscoring that enormous responsibility during their meeting in the Oval Office right now. Dana, stay with us. Josh Holmes is with us as well. He's a former chief of staff to Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. I understand that after Donald Trump leaves the White House, he'll head up to Capitol Hill. He'll meet with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. He's had a sort of a testy relationship with him. Also meet with Mitch McConnell. Relationship hasn't been all that great with him either. Set the scene for us, Josh. How's that meeting going to unfold? Because the president-elect, once he's president, he's going to rely on the Republican leadership in the House and Senate to get the job done, to pass the legislation he promised the American people he would recommend.
That's absolutely right. These are amongst the most important meetings that he's going to have. And as you said, Wolf, everything that he talked about in the campaign and the agenda for the first 100 days and beyond is going to be relying on that relationship that he has with both Speaker Ryan and Majority Leader McConnell. I think this is a good, positive first step. Obviously, some of this is formality and that you've got to go up and you've got to meet with folks. But this is a relationship that I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned of the Obama administration in 2009. They did not spend a ton of time on Capitol Hill between the time that he was elected and by the time he was inaugurated in January. And those relationships never were really fully formed. And I think that the incoming Trump administration, both in terms of their appointments to the cabinet, in terms of staff, and in terms of the relationship itself between Donald Trump and those leaders, is incredibly important.
Stand by, Josh. Jim Acosta, our White House correspondent, is there on